As I discovered her secret letters, my heart broke piece by piece. She wasn't just cheating, she was planning a new life with my cousin. Confronting her led to more lies, but then I caught them in our bed, laughing at my ignorance. The betrayal was unbearable. Anger turned into a cold, calculating fury. I installed hidden cameras, capturing every sordid detail. On our anniversary, I played the footage for all to see, turning their lives upside down. This is my story. Witness the fallout. I really wish I had made time to help my wife clear the bookcase she had been wanting since we moved into our cozy old cottage. She loved this place and couldn't wait to move in. Finally, when we saved enough money, we left our small apartment for a house. When someone says old cottage, you know that I spent almost every weekend and many evenings fixing things, and that's an understatement. I'm a carpenter by trade, which helped a lot. Even though it frustrated Claire, I thought building a kitchen and fixing the broken floors was more important than making a bookcase, no matter how many books we had. So, yes, forgive me for wanting to surprise my wife for our upcoming 10th wedding anniversary. Buying this old house and working so hard to make it nice for her should have shown my love. I wanted to make her happy, especially while she planted her herb garden in the backyard and lovely roses along the path to the front door. I really had to redo almost everything inside, but that didn't seem to matter as much as giving her a weekend at a spa. To keep it short, while she was enjoying massages and relaxing, I was busy building a custom bookcase that would cover an entire wall in our living room. I was excited about the surprise until I tripped while bringing in the 5th box from the shed. The box flew up into the air, and it landed everywhere. This box was full of romance novels. They're Claire's favorite. The books scattered all over the room, and one even hit the light, making it swing back and forth. Then I saw the beautiful paper. I realized love letters should really be hidden in books about love. I couldn't help myself. I was tempted to read the first lines of the first book I found. One by one, the pages fell to the floor like flower petals. They reminded me of our wedding day, sweet and innocent, full of promise about a happy life together. Then I thought these letters were from Claire's teenage years, maybe from someone she used to like. I read one letter. That was a big mistake, a huge mistake. I discovered that these love letters were not from a high school boyfriend, and that wasn't the only issue. 2 other big problems came to mind right away. The letter in my hand was from my cousin Zach. The letter was dated just a few weeks before we moved into the cottage a year ago. This made me think a lot. How long had they been together? Were they still seeing each other? Was she with him now? Was Claire hiding more of these letters? No, that can't be right. Not while I was working hard to create the house of her dreams. I really wanted to make her happy. My heart was filled with fear because of the questions swirling in my mind. My brain told me it was likely that something was wrong, and I would have to face these questions, no matter how hard it would be. When the first letter slipped from my fingers, I wished I could forget it. Reading it hurt me deeply. I felt shaken, as if someone had punched me in the chest. I struggled to breathe, as if I had broken ribs. The pain made me weak, and I fell to the floor. I leaned against the wall, trying to keep myself steady and wishing my stomach would calm down. I felt like I had lost this fight. I quickly got to my knees. The awful smell made me gag again until I was empty inside. I crawled away from the mess because my legs felt too weak to stand. I leaned against the bookcase I hated. I looked at the other letters on the floor, all different colors like a pretty quilt. They looked nice against the dark floor, but I knew they held lies and more pain. Should I read them? The scared part of me didn't want to. It felt like I couldn't take more hurt. It wanted to hide, to find a place to disappear. It whispered that reading them would be like poking my eyes and heart with hot sticks. But the brave part of me said to open my eyes and face the truth. It encouraged me to end this painful part of my life that I was now tangled in. It told me that dragging it out would only make things worse. It reminded me that I needed to gather all the facts for the fight ahead. Because a fight was coming, whether I liked it or not. I listened to my brave side and knelt down. I collected all the letters and put them in order by date. Zach, the helpful guy that he was, had included the dates. I made a note to thank him later, maybe with a punch. I noticed he only wrote 2 or 3 letters a year, usually for Valentine's Day or her birthday. My heart sank when I saw one dated just a few days before my 30th birthday. Another worry started to grow. Most of the letters were written after Claire and I had gotten married. I sank into my favorite chair. The bitter smell from my sickness felt fitting. It matched how I felt. I closed my eyes, and even though the smell was bad, I took a few deep breaths. I started with the first letter, written while Claire and I were still together. I began to read the words, and they jumped out at me, hurting my heart and filling my head with images I didn't want to see. These memories made me bite my lip to stop myself from making any sounds of pain. I remembered feeling like it was my special day when you slipped away from Danny at the party. What we did in the alley felt exciting. Thank you, my beautiful girl. I realized that this was about Claire's 21st birthday. We had been together for a year. She looked stunning that night. I remembered her in that lovely white dress as she danced. That night, I decided to ask her to marry me. I was such a fool back then. Anger began to rise inside me, fighting with the pain in my stomach. Standing next to Danny, watching you walk down the aisle, it was the most awful thing I had ever known. You were so bad, Claire Bear. I loved it. After reading those words, I had to pause as my stomach turned. The pain was too much. I felt aches everywhere. No, please, God! On our wedding day, she cheated on me. With him, my cousin. We grew up together. I thought of him as one of my best friends. I needed a break. I stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I hardly recognized the man in the mirror. I couldn't bear to look at him. The pain I saw was too much for me. I focused on brushing my teeth, trying to get rid of the bitter taste in my mouth. Toothpaste didn't help. Mouthwash didn't either. I thought maybe the brandy I kept for my father would do the trick. I usually preferred beer, but when my father visited, we would share a bottle. He always said brandy was good for you, and I hoped he was right. I needed something for my aching heart. I leaned back in my chair and kept reading. Each painful line made me take another sip of brandy. Many sips. I enjoyed the burn. My father was right. It felt like medicine, calming my wounds from the inside. The tone of Zach's letters was so different from the pretty paper they were on. They should have been written on dark red paper, the color of blood from the hurt they caused. He wasn't a poet. I wondered why Claire kept these letters. He had never told her she was beautiful or compared her to the stars, never called her his everything. Or you could think of them like famous lovers such as Romeo and Juliet. He never told her he loved her. He wrote many times about liking something she said or did or wore, but he didn't say, "I love you." Strangely, this made me feel sorry for her. She had left our marriage, leaving a good man behind. And I was a good man, even if I sometimes enjoyed a little fun. Besides, he couldn't keep a girl around. Most of the time, girls left him. Not the other way around. If he was such a great catch, why did he keep losing them to someone else? The last letter was just like the others. Maybe the brandy had dulled my senses, or maybe I had read so many terrible things that I couldn't be shocked anymore. There was nothing in the letter to say that their affair was over or even starting. In fact, Zach wrote that he was excited to explore every room in the cottage with his Claire Bear. From his signature, I guess there were a few more letters hidden in the house, thanks to my not-so-loving wife's way of keeping things. I went into our bedroom and found the cheap bookshelf she had put there. In just 5 minutes, I discovered 3 more letters. I was horrified that she kept them in our bedroom, where they were not hidden at all. Had she really been reading them while I showered? She had shown herself to be so bold that nothing shocked me anymore. I realized I didn't really know her at all. The woman I thought I married would never have done this. This thought cut through the pain already in my heart and felt like a new wound. My wife was a stranger to me. The last letter, written just a week before, snapped me out of my daze. It took me several tries to read it all because my eyes were blurry. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was too harsh to accept. As the noise in my head grew louder, I read it again to make sure my mind wasn't playing tricks. Unbelievable. You want to have a baby with me? Just thinking about that makes me feel sick. The thought of you wanting Zach to be the father of our kids was shocking. I had been asking her when we could start a family since our 5th wedding anniversary. I really wanted to be a dad. I asked every year. And each time she brushed it off, saying we needed more time, which really meant she wasn't ready. She gave all the usual reasons. We need to focus on our jobs. We need to be in a better place financially. We need to have a house instead of an apartment. I pushed through every challenge she put in my way. Finally, after our 9th anniversary, she agreed we could try for a baby after our 10th. A week later, I planned to remind her of this at our dinner celebration. But then I saw it. I couldn't believe it. It was real. A letter that proved what she had said, her plans, her hopes. I felt so shocked that I couldn't even feel the hurt at first. Or maybe I was already hurting so much that this news only added to my pain, like an unwanted TV commercial. I kept thinking about how she would tell him that their fun had led to this news, that she was expecting a baby, and that he was going to be a dad. I was sure he would kiss her and hug her. How would he look, happy or just proud because he had won over me? Would he try to hide it from her, or would they both share in the moment? I always imagined how I would feel if she told me such big news. I often pictured myself like the guys in sad love stories, emotional, proud, and happy. But that was not my story. I was not in that happy scene. A guy named Zach took my chance, my future. I couldn't have the hugs, the kisses, the joy of holding her in my arms. I had waited for years for her to be ready for this. What was Zach waiting for? Who did he really love and cherish? No one. Not a single person. Maybe she would never be ready for me because she didn't want me to be the father of her kids. That thought broke through my pain and struck a new wound. Why did I read that letter? Why did I let my curiosity get the better of me? If I had just ignored it, I could have stayed in the dark. I wished I could close my eyes and go back to how things used to be, where I thought my wife loved me and only me. The old reality was where I felt happy. Now, I was fully aware of the hurt. I was drowning in it. Now I had to make tough choices. I was faced with the awful truth that my whole marriage had been a lie, a big show. I realized that the last 12 years of my life had been wasted. I had been fooled every day. My love had gone to someone who did not value it and certainly didn't deserve it. Now, I knew I had been tricked for reasons I didn't understand. None of the vows, promises, or sweet words were real. All of it was a lie. Memories flashed through my mind like a movie. Claire laughing and looking at me. Claire smiling through tears. The day I got down on one knee to ask her to marry me. Claire asleep, looking like an angel. Claire's hand in mine, her face when we were close together. Lies, lies. Who was that woman? What did I do to make her hate me so much? Maybe she should hate me. No one could act that way without really hating the person they hurt. I sat with my brandy trying to understand the woman in Zach's letters compared to the woman I knew and loved. My broken heart didn't want to dig deeper, but my mind had to figure it out. I couldn't turn it off. My mind needed answers. It couldn't stand not knowing. Why, how, and where. Most of all, why? I had never loved Claire blindly. I saw her flaws. She wasn't perfect, but I loved those quirks. They made her who she was. I believed she loved me, too, even with my flaws, maybe because of them. If you asked me, I'd say we balanced each other out. She taught me to be spontaneous. I taught her to plan better. She set goals, and I learned that sometimes it's okay to let things go. I thought she was the light to my dark. I believed she was a good person. I never heard her speak badly about friends, family, or co-workers. I always saw her as kind. Sure, she would flirt a bit after a couple drinks, but it was never too much. I never questioned her loyalty. Sometimes I thought she was a bit scatterbrained and too caught up in things that didn't matter, like celebrity gossip and fashion. She didn't need all that. She was just as beautiful in jeans and a t-shirt, hair in a ponytail, as she was in a fancy dress with her hair styled perfectly. She was crazy about celebrity beauty products. She had enough makeup to start her own store. And shoes. Oh, how she loved shoes. We would have saved money if she had cut back on them and handbags. I didn't mind spending money, but I liked to spend it on meaningful things. Things like making memories together, having special dinners, weekend trips, traveling to new places, or even learning to ski or ride horses together. I would happily try cooking or pottery classes with her if it made her smile. If it was something we could do together, I was all in. Claire liked our trips, but looking back, I realized that while I wanted to see impressive buildings or museums, she preferred to shop in trendy areas. I wanted to snorkel with sea turtles, while she wanted to lie by the pool and watch celebrities. The list could go on and on. I had to face the fact that we spent most of the day doing our own things. The only time we came together was at the hotel for dinner. She didn't seem as different from the selfish person in Zach's letters as I thought. I realized I just had to look more clearly. I shut my eyes for a moment, angry at myself for not seeing her true self. I saw that I was only seeing what I wanted to see. I focused on the nice things she said or did and ignored the bad ones. It hurt to realize that my trust and hope had led to her lying to me. I could imagine her and Zach laughing at how easily I believed in my wife. They must have laughed at how I trusted her without question. It hit me hard. 12 years together, all right in front of me, and I missed it. How could I be so foolish? Maybe I deserved this. Maybe my own foolishness let her do this to me. For a while, I felt very sorry for myself. My stomach twisted, my throat felt tight, and my eyes burned with uncried tears. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to keep my feelings hidden from her. She wouldn't care, but I would know. She didn't deserve my sadness. Then something changed. I had a moment of clarity, and I decided to stop blaming myself. I wasn't the one who lied and cheated. I wasn't the bad person here. No matter my own flaws, they didn't excuse how she treated me. Love had made me blind to what was happening around me. That's what love does. It makes you trust. Love makes you want to support and care for someone. It makes you see the good in your partner. It leads you to give them the benefit of the doubt. After all, who would choose to love someone cruel like Claire or Zach? People like them relied on the kindness of people like me, on our trust, on our belief that most people are good. If I had to choose between a careless jerk and someone a bit naive, I'd pick the naive one. At least that person can look in the mirror and feel honorable. Maybe a little foolish, but still honorable. As time passed, I felt a mix of feelings slowly become just two: sadness and anger. I decided to set aside the sadness for now. In the end, I was grieving for a woman and a relationship that didn't really exist. It was a dream I made up in my mind. But my anger was real and should be shown. It was strong and fierce, just what I needed at that moment. Even as the pain tried to take me down, anger made me feel strong. I knew I had to think carefully. I told myself, "Be smart, Danny. Don't do anything foolish." Claire and Zach were not worth going to jail for. I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted them to feel real regret, not just escape from life. I needed to learn about my rights when getting a divorce. Feeling inspired, I hurried to my makeshift office in the spare bedroom. I had learned a lot about divorce laws in Australia since yesterday. We had to be officially separated for a whole year before I could file for divorce. After I filed the paperwork, I would wait about 4 to 6 weeks for a hearing. During that time, I needed to make sure Claire got the papers. If the judge decided our marriage was truly over, he would give a decree nisi. A month and a day later, if I didn't change my mind, which I wasn't going to do, the court would automatically give an absolute decree. Claire could question how we divided our things for a whole year after that decree. As I walked through the cottage, I saw all the work I had put into it. The house wouldn't make much money, and I knew we might lose some. But once I finished the repairs, it could sell for a good amount because I was doing all the work myself. Claire had picked that house, but I refused to let her have it in the divorce. Actually, keeping the house could hurt her, and I liked that idea. I would rather destroy the place than let her benefit from my hard work. When we got married, I already owned my own apartment. Well, the bank owned it, but the mortgage was in my name and I paid it. The money I had put into selling my apartment helped buy the cottage, along with our savings. I could prove I put in 3 times more money than Claire. Plus, my salary paid for the mortgage and most of our bills, like phones, her car, insurance, and even vacations. Claire only paid for her clothes, makeup, and some grocery shopping. I also realized how lucky I was that we didn't have kids. That would make everything much more complicated. Our property didn't have to be split 50-50ths. If I could show where I got the money for the loan and other payments during our marriage, Claire would only get 30 to 40% of our assets, so no repairs or changes to the house until the divorce was settled. I told myself that if possession is 9/10 of the law, then I would make sure I held on to what was mine. That meant I had to change the locks before she got home on Monday night. Today was Saturday, so I had a lot of time to think and put things off a little. We had never set up a shared bank account, so we didn't need to split our money. Now that I think about it, maybe she wanted it that way. Why would she want to keep her money secret? If I'm paying for everything, it seems easier for her to manage her expenses without me knowing. I worried she might be spending money on things I wouldn't like, or on a place to stay with someone else. I decided to lower the limit on our shared credit card. Most of the charges were from her anyway, so I thought it was unfair for me to keep paying for it all. But I wanted to keep her from spending money without her noticing what I was doing. I didn't want to be stuck with her bills moving forward. I set the card limit to $250, just enough for her to fill up on gas or buy some food for a couple of days. My main worry was my retirement fund. I made 3 times what Claire did and was a few years older. I had saved up a lot for retirement. If we separated, a kind judge might give her half of my pension, no matter how we split our other things. They could also give me part of hers, but I would still lose out in the end. I started thinking about ways to protect my money. Once I finished handling everything online, I felt lost about what to do next. What should I do now? I looked around and noticed a mess on the living room floor. I quickly cleaned it up, but the smell only made my anger rise again, bringing my focus back to my plans. It was time to pack her things. As I worked, I thought about what to do with her stuff. I could store it or take it to her parents' house. I could even drop it off at Zach's place. At first, I didn't want to pay for storage since I didn't want to spend any more money on her. But as I kept thinking, the idea of storage started to look good. I could change the locks and leave for a few days without letting Claire know where I was. Let her wonder and worry for a while. Maybe spending a little money would be worth it to see how she reacted. The only things of Claire's that I decided to keep were the letters. I thought about scanning them, but figured it would be best to keep the originals. She clearly cared about those things, even if it was just to make herself feel good or seem important. If she didn't, she would have thrown them away. Leaving them behind would hurt too much. It would be another hit of pain and letdown for me, especially for what I planned to do to her and her annoying boyfriend. I started to think about how Zach would feel if our whole family read his letters. As I packed my things, I also sorted out my thoughts. When I finished, I went back to my home office and set reminders on my calendar to officially end things with Claire in a week and to cancel her phone service. Giving her an extra week meant I would technically still be married to her for a little longer. But it also gave me time to come up with some plans, which helped ease my worries. Plus, I was sure she would leave some interesting messages on my phone since her car loan was in both our names. I switched the payment details to Claire's account. While I was at her car, I also called the insurance company to cancel her insurance. This would begin the following Friday. It allowed me to get back almost half of what I had paid. With that little bit of money, I decided where to put Claire's things. My stomach growled, reminding me to eat. I felt hungry, but the thought of food turned my stomach. I was torn between my body's needs and my feelings. I warmed up a can of soup and had it with buttered toast while I worked on my short-term plans. Next chapter. I turned to look at the clock on my nightstand. It read 3:15. I sighed. 45 minutes had gone by since I last checked. It was easier to keep my anger under control during the day and evening, but now that it was late, my anger was fading. I wanted it back. Anger felt good. Anger kept me moving and focused on getting back at Claire, but the thought of her betrayal made me feel weak. Pain, however, grew in the darkness. Pain filled my thoughts. I fought back tears, squeezing my eyes shut, trying to hold them in. Each tear that slipped down my face brought me shame. She didn't deserve my tears, just like my love. They were wasted on her. Next chapter. I welcomed the bright light coming through the porch. Daylight meant things would happen, and that helped ease my pain. I gulped down a piece of toast and looked around at my surroundings. I had to be careful. The house needed to stay livable for the next 2 years, but I wanted to keep costs down. The day flew by, and by the time the sun was setting, I had moved Claire's things into storage. I changed the locks, and several rooms in the house looked unfinished now. With a beer in my hand, I called my parents. Luckily, my father picked up. My mother was too good at reading people. I knew she would figure me out really fast. In less than a minute, actually. "Hi, Dad. Hi, Danny. This will be a quick call, Dad. I wanted to let you and Mom know I'll be away for about a week, so I won't be at dinner on Wednesday like usual. I need to make a plan for a new hotel and restaurant that's a few hours away." "Sounds like an important job. It must be big if you need a whole week." "Yeah, it is. While I'm there, I thought I'd explore the area to see if there are other job offers and check out housing or short-term rentals for me and the boys." "That's my boy. Always thinking ahead, just like me. Right, Dad?" My dad laughed. Well, I don't like to brag. Now it was my turn to chuckle. I've got to go, Dad. I need to get ready so I can leave early in the morning and avoid traffic. Tell Mom I love her, and I'll see you when I get back. Okay, son. Have a safe trip and good luck with your plan. Oh, I just remembered. Show them pictures of that awesome game room you made for that guy who got divorced. That was a really great bar and play area. Maybe someday I can convince your mom to let you build one for me. His joke about the game room made me laugh, even though it felt forced. I hoped he wouldn't notice. I called before I gave away too much or he asked for details. I hadn't lied. I just changed the truth a bit. There was a project up north I needed to finish soon, but not this week. Next, I called my brother Sean and told him the same story I told Dad. I felt okay with my little lie. At least Sean and our parents wouldn't tell Claire anything. Soon, I would need to tell them the truth and bring them into my messy situation. I was nervous about this. I knew they would feel sad for me. I started to wonder if Claire and Zach thought about how many people would be hurt by what they were doing. Probably not. So I picked carefully who to call next. I needed someone who wouldn't talk to my dad or brother, but someone Claire could chat with. In the end, I couldn't decide between Claire's two best friends, Susie and Terry. Both were married and part of our big group of friends. If I were planning, I would invite them to a surprise party. I called both of them. Hi, Susie. This is Danny. Hi, Danny. How's it going? How is Claire enjoying her weekend at the spa? Lucky her, I'm so jealous. Susie laughed softly but teased me. I guess that's good. At least she isn't calling me to complain. I tried to sound cheerful when I talked, but it didn't feel good. So here's the deal, Susie. I have a lot of calls to make, so I'll be quick. I'm planning a surprise party for Claire for our 10th wedding anniversary. I want to call as many people as I can today to get their ideas, because I'll be out west for work next week. But you know Claire will be home tomorrow, and it will be harder to keep this a secret. Not surprising, Susie said she and her husband would help. I gave her some general details, unofficially in 2 weeks. You can invite others too. I'll reach out later to confirm the place and time. Of course, that was a lie. I had no plans for a party. My chat with Terry was pretty much the same. Now I had to make the hardest call. Zach. I poured myself a glass of brandy and drank it all at once. It burned a little, but the warmth felt nice in my stomach. I pressed speed dial for Zach's number. I knew I had to change this. I didn't want to keep talking to my cousin who had betrayed me. Hey, Rat, Zach, how's it going? For the first time, I thought about how well his childhood nickname fit him. He had gotten into trouble all the time as a kid. I remembered his mom would lightly slap him and call him a Pied Piper, always with a smile. Now, I said it like I meant it. Zach, the cocky guy, didn't get it. Hey, Danny, what's up? I told Susie and Terry almost the same thing I told my dad and Sean, but with a twist. I said I would be working a few hours south. You're really spoiling Claire, Danny. Maybe it was just me, but I heard a hint of pride in his voice. I was furious. Zach was lucky he was far away. If we were face to face, I doubt I could keep my cool. Yeah, well, that's what you do when you love someone. You spoil them. I couldn't believe I actually said that. You should try that with the girls you date. Maybe one will stick around, he shot back. As soon as I said it, I wished I hadn't. It was a dumb comment. I held my breath, hoping he didn't catch how I really felt about him. Zach laughed. You might be right, but I like having choices. I like to mix things up a bit. Yeah, something like that, except for Claire, except for my wife. I needed to end the conversation before I revealed too much. Well, I'll let you get back to whatever you're doing. I wouldn't call it that. A few dinners aren't as much as what some guys do for their wives. Maybe. I laughed a little, unable to hold back one last joke. But Claire was always so easy to make happy. All I had to do was bring her home a bunch of flowers. I did it more than once, and I did it just like I showed her. I won't go into details about how she gets all excited when she gets a new purse for her growing collection. I'll just leave it at that. I had a really good week. Better than good, and it was worth every penny. There was silence on the other end of the phone, and I wondered if I had crossed a line. I had never talked poorly about Claire before. Oh man, I needed to pull myself together. I had obviously drunk too much while making those calls. It loosened my tongue way too much. Don't worry, Danny. Your secret is safe with me. I hope it stays safer than the way you treated our family ties and Claire's vows. Jerk. Yeah, thanks. Talk to you soon. My thoughts bounced around in my head like the pebbles I used to roll on the calm lake when I was a kid. I was thinking about silly things I hadn't thought about in a long time. Zach and I would sneak into the bushes behind his house to try the cigarettes he had taken from his dad, and we would cough and choke. Sean, Zach, and I played football with the other kids in the neighborhood, had sleepovers where we whispered late into the night. There was that double date at the movies where Zach and I were both nervous and unsure. We all competed to see who could play Pokemon better. Boys, fishing, swimming, surfing, camping. So many thoughts, so many memories, and they're all ruined. When did Zach forget about our friendship, our childhood? When did he decide that betraying me was okay just to amuse my girlfriend? My wife? How could he face himself knowing what he had done to me and our family? How did he explain it to himself? I clenched my jaw and tried to stop thinking about it. All those thoughts wouldn't help me. They would only upset me more and drive me crazy with questions. I felt worn out but relieved that I had succeeded in hiding where I was for the next week. Depending on who Claire talked to, she might think I was north, south, or west of our home. I walked toward the shower. Next chapter. Another night of tossing and turning. Another night filled with questions I probably wouldn't ever get answers to. At least not honest ones. Nothing I could believe without doubts. Claire and Zach had shown me they were sneaky, untrustworthy, and only cared for themselves. Anything they said to defend themselves would only make me more suspicious. It was frustrating. I just wanted to know the truth. I couldn't stop the questions bouncing around in my mind. I wanted to know why. I wanted to understand how they could do something so awful. I needed something to hold on to, something I could point to and say, yes, this is why she hurt me, this is why she didn't love me. It would be easier to handle if I had a clear reason to blame, just one simple answer that could explain everything and spare me the pain of not understanding why. If she never felt a spark or connection with me, why did she marry me? If she wanted Zach, why not choose him? If she wanted to play around, why did she even say yes to me? Why did she betray me? Why be so cruel? Why tell so many lies? Why ignore my feelings and his? I wanted to know how he could look at me all these years. How could he lie to me again and again? How could he pretend that our shared past didn't matter? How could he sit next to me at church, knowing what he had done? How could he enjoy it? I wanted the same answers from Claire. How could she do this? She had a good life. She was loved and cared for. So why did she act this way? What did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? Deep down, I knew that nothing I did could ever explain their choices. But still, the truth haunted me. I would never know everything. I realized I had to accept it, Danny. You won't ever know. Thinking about it all would only give them more power over me, and I had already given them too much. Even with my efforts to stay positive, I kept thinking about what I didn't understand. I felt lost, like I was washed up on shore without an anchor in a rushing river. Everything I believed about Claire and me turned out to be false. My life felt like a lie. I didn't have anything solid to hold on to. I felt empty. Looking in the mirror, I cursed Claire and Zach for how my shoulders slumped and my head hung down as I stared at my reflection. I remembered my choice from the night before. I would not blame myself for what Claire and Zach had done. Their actions were on them, not me. I straightened up, squared my shoulders, and lifted my chin. My gaze was strong. They couldn't defeat me. I wouldn't let them. They had already taken so much from me. I wouldn't let them take any more. Turning the page to the next chapter, I smiled. She seemed more mad than happy, but it was a start. It was early in the morning, and Claire was not a morning person. Even at 7, when I usually woke her up, I felt like I needed a crowbar to get her out of bed. Hi, Claire. Sorry for the early text, but I couldn't sleep last night. It was the beer. I'll be at work until 8 o'clock on Friday. I'll call you when I can. Love you. Using my nickname for Claire felt even worse than saying, I love you. I thought to myself that I would never see her the same way again. Whether she was awake or not, I doubted she would reply. She would probably read this, turn over, and try to sleep again, likely angry with me. I smiled a little as I rinsed my coffee cup and placed it in the drying rack. I picked up my suitcase and walked to the front door. I was going away for a few days to work on my story. I had told my dad and brother my version of the truth. After my phone calls last night helped me make an excuse, I realized I needed to call someone else. I dialed Ray, who was my foreman, and told him the same story I had shared with my dad and brother. We talked for a bit about our jobs. I knew I could trust him to manage things while I was away. As I shut the front door, the silence hit me. No dogs barking. The birds hadn't even started to sing yet. I took in the cool fall air happily. It smelled sweet, filled with jasmine from the fence between my cottage and the McDonald's next door on the left. I tossed my suitcase into the passenger seat of my beloved vehicle. It was a working Toyota Hilux SUV. You could say it showed that I liked simple things. I wasn't interested in fancy cars like Porsches or Lamborghinis. A well-tuned work truck was more my style. My truck was shiny, a deep red color, and had a custom tray with toolboxes and shelves to keep everything organized. I drove out of the driveway and headed toward the highway. I liked driving away from the cottage. Each mile helped clear my mind and focus away from thoughts of Claire. I needed to think and make plans. Part 2. I relaxed on a lounge chair under a big umbrella, holding a beer in my hand. A small patch of grass and palm trees separated the motel from the beach, along with a pool. Both looked nice, and the weather was warm, but I didn't really care about them. I felt let down. I had many plans. Some were clever, others not so much. They all came from feelings of revenge and embarrassment. I could take out a big ad in the local paper to expose Zach's letters, complete with names and dates. I could hire a private investigator to catch them and share the video online. I could even make their relationship a trending topic on different websites. I could create an alibi for myself and confront Zach. After all, my 10th wedding anniversary was coming up soon. I could throw a party that everyone would remember and show it to our family and friends. Each idea tempted me in some way. I wanted them to feel pain and shame. I wanted them to regret what they had done. I wanted them to pay a heavy price for their betrayal, but I was facing a difficult choice. I wanted to handle this without acting like they did. When it was all done, I wanted to look in the mirror and see a good person looking back at me. If I wanted to heal and move on, I had to believe that, or I would become a shadow of myself. If that happened, they would have won, and I would have lost. They would keep holding me back for the rest of my life. It would be hard for me to trust or love again. But I did want to love again. I dreamed of having my own family. I wanted to be as strong and brave for my son or daughter as my father was for me. He was my hero, and I wanted to be like him. But if I went through with the thoughts I had, no matter how right they felt, I wouldn't be able to be that person. I wouldn't be someone my father or my child could be proud of. And if I acted on my plans, they would see just how much they had hurt me. I could handle that knowledge if I thought my pain would make them feel guilty and change them. But why would they care about how they hurt me? They had betrayed me for 12 years and clearly didn't care about me or my feelings. If they truly knew how much I was hurting, they might even feel happier. I couldn't give them that satisfaction. Feeling sad, I went to my room. I needed to be by myself. I didn't want to be around anyone, not even strangers. Even though I didn't feel like eating, I decided to order an early dinner. While waiting for my food, I took a shower. I ate my meal without tasting it. I looked around but didn't really see anything, and I heard things but didn't hear them properly. Anger and sadness filled me, making it hard to focus on anything else. I moved around my small room, but it felt too small for the feelings I was having. So I walked to the beach that was near my home, and it felt good to hear the sand crunch under my feet and the waves crashing on the shore. On the beach, I kicked sand and threw pieces of driftwood and shells into the water. I was quiet on the outside, but inside I was shouting. Life wasn't fair. Why did it have to be so unfair? The people who had done wrong didn't seem to be hurt at all, while I, the one who had done nothing wrong, was suffering in every way, physically, mentally, financially, and emotionally. The unfairness felt like poison in my stomach, burning and eating away at me. They were the ones who had hurt me. But unless I found a way to be inspired, all I could do to get back at them was to be successful and have a good life. That didn't seem like enough. Not nearly enough. As I walked back into my room, I realized I hadn't turned my phone on all day. When I did, the new ringtone I had set for Claire began to play, "I Don't Want You Back." The new song played softly in my room, and it was much better than the old ringtone I used for my unfaithful wife, John Legend's All of Me. This song fit my feelings and our situation perfectly. I could see why people say there's a song for every moment. I moved quickly. I turned on the radio in my room. I had set it up to make a loud, crackling noise instead of playing music. I grabbed the crumpled paper I had prepared earlier and pressed the speaker button on my cell phone. "Danny, where are you? I can't get into the house," Claire's voice came through. I started fiddling with the paper next to the phone. "Danny, what's that noise? I can barely hear you, and the static is awful," I replied, but I only said every other word. I had to hold back my laughter. "Danny, can you hear me? I can't understand you. You're breaking up. I can't get into the house. My key doesn't work. Where are you? When will you be home?" I heard her frustration clearly, but I just grinned. "What? I got the words. Charger home and yes. I'll be home on Friday," I said. Everyone could feel it, the way the tension was building. I was reaching for the phone on the nightstand when Claire shouted at me not to hang up. I smiled and pressed the button to end the call. I knew Claire would be mad. My wife was used to getting everything her way and not waiting for anyone. I felt a rush of joy imagining her unhappiness. Was I being mean? Yes. Childish? Yes, but it felt good. Still smiling, I checked my texts and messages. I saw Claire had sent me a dozen or more. I read and listened to them all, enjoying every word. There was even an email. They were all similar to her call, showing how worried she was that she couldn't reach me or get into the house. Seeing her irritation made me smile wider. I even whistled as I stepped outside. Sure, I could have called her from my room phone or replied to her email on my laptop. Normally, I would have. But nothing made me feel better than annoying my wife just a little bit. As for my days, they were busy on purpose. I was doing what I promised my father and brother. I was looking for housing opportunities. I met with builders and architects, giving out business cards everywhere. This would help me later when it was time to make a plan for any work I found. Nights were tough. Even enjoying Claire's angry texts didn't fill the emptiness I felt. No matter how hard I tried to move on, the questions, resentment, and anger about being betrayed by Claire and Zach kept pushing me forward. I took my frustration to the beach. I walked for miles, wishing to release some of my anger. I knew I was partly to blame for all this. The signs had been there all along. I realized that looking back, things are much clearer. Zach, being Zach, always had to say a few things that stuck with me. Why hadn't I noticed before how he liked to boast? I stopped and turned around, feeling the waves touching my ankles as my feet sank slightly into the cool, wet sand. The feeling was refreshing. Unlike the memories I had right after my 5th wedding anniversary, I clearly saw Zach's face as he joked around, teasing me with bits of news. When I playfully asked him about his love life, he said, "She's really cool. I'm not ready to let everyone meet her yet. I want to keep her just for me a bit longer." Those were just a few of his hints. Then he said something serious. "She's married. The old man doesn't suit her, but she feels sorry for him, so she sticks around." My disapproving look must have shown how I felt because he noticed. He had the sense to tell me not to judge until I had walked in her shoes. Then he smirked and told me that if any woman offered me what this one had given him, I would forget my marriage vows without thinking twice. He even said some things that were too much, and I had to tell him to stop because I was worried Claire might overhear. Of course, he was wrong. I would never cheat on Claire, no matter what. The woman who suggested such a thing was out of line, but I didn't argue then. He stopped, but not before asking me to keep this secret safe. He didn't want Claire and our family to know about his fun with a married woman. I remembered his face, the glint in his eyes, full of mischief and a bit too proud. Now, with the wisdom of looking back, I understood his amusement better. He must have thought my promise to keep his secret about his affair, yes, the affair he was having with my wife, was hilarious. Next chapter, another evening, another walk on the beach. I worried that I was starting a new habit that was the opposite of what Claire did. I replayed my life with her, looking at every memory with new eyes. In my mind, I picked apart everything about her hair, her makeup, her clothes, even the way she walked. Were her clothes wrinkled? Was her hair messy? Was her lipstick fresh? Smudged? Did she smell like a different perfume? I searched through all these memories, hoping not to find proof of betrayal. That would only remind me of my foolishness and my blind trust in my wife. Trying to understand something that felt impossible with shaky memories was painful. It felt like it was tearing me apart. I was such a fool, a big, clueless fool. My self-confidence was lower than ever. I had never felt so insecure in my life about being a man, a partner, a friend. Not even as a teenager had I felt this way. Still, I searched through my memories. I felt awful about myself. It was like a scratch I couldn't ignore, and I had to dig deep for answers to questions I should have figured out. Usually, I enjoy driving. I like watching the scenery go by from the window. My Toyota feels good on the road, like it's happy to be there. Long drives have always been fun for me, but today was different. Today felt like torture. Each mile I drove toward home felt like a slow walk to something awful. Today I was battling with myself again. One part of me wanted answers and the truth. The other part didn't want to hear her lies. She always had excuses that only helped her. Nothing she said could change what happened. No words or apologies could fix things. So what was the point in talking? At the next turn, I changed my mind and suddenly swerved into another lane without signaling. I got some honks and a few gestures that weren't friendly. Then I turned left toward my parents' house. I parked and stared at their front door, feeling sorry for dragging them into my mess. These problems were mine, but my family was close. Mom, Dad, Sean, and Sean's wife, Mel, would get pulled into my struggles just like the earth goes around the sun. I knew Mom would be heartbroken. After all, Jack's mom was her sister. I looked at the passenger seat and saw a folder with Zach's letters. I snorted at the sight, treating those damaging letters like some school project. Honestly, I'd rather throw them away, but I knew I had to hold on to them for now. I wrinkled my nose and picked them up. I got out of the car and walked to the front door with a strong stride, though it was more for show than confidence. I knocked, and Mom answered. She leaned in, grabbed my arm, and kissed my cheek. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked. "Claire's been here every day saying she can't reach you or get into the house. We've been really worried. Why aren't you answering your phone or email? Let me in. Call Sean and Mel. Give me one of Dad's beers and we can all talk." I wanted to explain everything just once. I didn't want to repeat myself. Oh no, that sounded bad. She moved to the side, looking worried. She knew something huge had to be happening if I was acting this way. I followed her down the hall while she stopped at a table to call Sean and Mel. I grabbed a beer and headed to the back patio, knowing that's where Dad would be. My mom always joked that Dad could live in a tent because he didn't really need a house unless it was raining. He loved being outside. After working as a bricklayer all his life, he just preferred fresh air and sunshine. When we were kids, Sean and I wanted to be like Dad and do the same work, but Dad told us to choose jobs that didn't depend on the weather. I liked creating things, so I became a carpenter, focusing on indoor design. Sean loved electricity. He still relaxes on his porch during storms, taking lots of photos of lightning over the water. So, Sean became an electrician. For many years, we all worked on the same jobs, at least until Dad retired about a year ago. Sean and I still recommended each other's work to our clients. When I visited, Dad looked me over, shook my hand, and gave me a strong hug. Then we sat down. I took a big sip of my beer and put my folder on the coffee table. Dad kept staring at me, raising an eyebrow as if to ask what was wrong. "It's a long story, Dad. I want to wait until Sean and Mel get here to tell it," I said. Dad reached out his big, rough hand and patted my knee, just like when I was a kid. "Okay, Danny, I can wait," he replied. That was one of the reasons I loved and respected him. He knew when to ask questions and when to wait. Soon, my mom joined us. She was making tea, which usually meant she knew I was about to share something serious. Hot, sweet tea was her way of helping with tough times. She quietly brought out the kettle with 2 cups, then handed Dad and me a fresh beer and set one aside for Sean when he arrived. It wasn't long before there was a knock at the front door. Sean and Mel lived just a few streets away, but they still came over. I hoped they had left the kids at home with Emily, their regular babysitter, who lived nearby. Then, I noticed Mel was hugging me while gently hitting me on the head with her purse. "Oh my God! Where have you been? Why haven't you answered our calls or emails?" She looked both angry and relieved. "We were really worried. We almost called the police if we didn't hear from you today." Mel's eyes were teary as she spoke, and I wanted to respond, but she was not done. "You scared us so much. How could you be so careless? If something had happened, how could we tell Maddie and Declan? Your niece and nephew adore you. Can you imagine how sad they would be? Danny, you can't do this. No one knew where you were. We just knew it was a few hours north. Do you understand how worried we were? You must have a good reason," Mel said, her voice tight with emotions. "I'm sorry, Mom, but it's true," I replied. Mom gently squeezed Mel's hand. She was used to Mel's anger and sharp words. It was part of what we all loved about her, and it made her a good match for Sean, who was much calmer. "Sit down, sweetie. Let's give Danny a chance to explain," Mom said softly. "Okay, first, I'm sorry for the trouble I caused. I guess I wasn't thinking clearly," I began. "I didn't think about everything happening around me. I was in shock, and I just needed to leave." Mel looked like she might shout at me again. I raised my hand. "Please listen to me before you get upset, Mel. I think if you hear my side, you'll understand why I ran off like that." I shared everything. I left nothing out, even the parts that made me look bad. I told them about wanting to give Claire a hard time when she couldn't get into the house. "So, if Claire calls you every day, does that mean she can't get in?" Mel asked. "No, if she could get in, she would call or stop by after work to check on you. We all waited until today because you said you'd be back," Mom explained. I laughed. "I'm a little surprised. I thought the lock change would keep her out, but I figured she'd find some way to get in anyway. At the least, I thought it would slow her down. I wanted her to worry about what was going on and how much I knew. She tried to convince a locksmith to let her in, but he wanted proof that she lived here and made her sign forms. She told him she couldn't show the bill or any papers because you handle everything," I said. I couldn't help but smile a little at Claire's struggle. "Don't smile yet, Danny. One visit to court and she might come back," Sean warned, though he was grinning too. "I know, but this will give me time to convince her that it's best for her to move out." "How will you do that?" Dad asked simply. "I'll tell her that if she moves back in, I'll leave. I can't stay under the same roof with her. If I go, the repairs will stop because I won't help with them anymore and I won't pay for anyone to fix things. Plus, I'll stop paying my mortgage. It'll have to get paid off somehow." "Oh, Danny, are you sure that's a good idea? You might lose the house," Mom said, holding my hand gently. "I know it's a risk, Mom, but I'd rather lose the house than let her have it. When it was built with my hard work and effort, but all the money you put into it, that's just money, Mom. I'm young. I can always earn more money. I would rather lose everything than see her benefit from her lies and betrayal. She betrayed me, and I won't give her a single dollar more than I have to." It showed a lot about how my mother felt. She didn't scold me for my words. She didn't usually let Sean or me talk like that, but Mel was fine with it. "I agree with you, Danny. Cheaters shouldn't win. That woman should pay for what she did, and so should that other guy. So where is she staying?" Mom opened her mouth to speak, but then closed it. She frowned for a moment before trying to answer. "Actually, Danny, I don't know. She never told me after she said no to my offer to stay here. I'm sorry, dear." "It's okay, Mom. You weren't meant to know. I just wanted to make it so you wouldn't have to lie for me. I even made up a few different stories. I wanted to confuse her so she wouldn't know how to find me. I told my work friends that I'd be in the West organizing a surprise party. I mixed up both stories for Zach, too, and then you called Zach." You could hear the surprise in Mel's voice. "Wow, how did you not lose it on the phone?" Sean asked. I forced a grin despite the pain. "You bet." My father shook his head, a small smile on his face. There was a pause in the conversation, and everyone looked at me. I could feel their love and support without words. My father was the first to speak. "It looks like your doubts about Claire were right after all." I looked at my mom in shock. She had always been kind to Claire. They might not have been as close as she was with Mel, but she had never been rude or unfair. "Did you have any concerns?" Mom shrugged. "Nothing I could point to. She was always polite and nice, but yes, I had my doubts about her. At first I thought it was just her age, but now she's in her 30s and should know better. I guess it was a woman's instinct. I didn't say anything to you because you were in love, and I had no proof for my doubts. Did either of you see anything strange? I thought hard, but I never saw her flirt with him more than anyone else or him showing interest in her at our family events." Everyone shook their heads. They've clearly been careful about their feelings, Mel said. What is it? My mom asked softly, touching the folder I was holding with the letters. These are all the letters Zach wrote. The folder slipped into her hands half open before I could stop her. Mom, I really don't think you want to see these. They are pretty crude and not nice at all. They're not love letters, I said, pausing to look at her. I knew I might freak out now, but I could handle it. We all watched her in silence. She shut her eyes for a long moment. Other than a couple of quiet sighs, she stayed still. When she finally opened her eyes, her face showed how disgusted she was. She handed the folder to Dad, who started reading what was inside. Reaching across the table, Mom took my hands. I'm so sorry you had to see this, dear. About two people you loved and trusted. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to hurt that person and Zach too. I'm glad you didn't because I don't want you to end up in jail. But they really deserve to suffer for what they did. There was silence again. It felt awkward. We were usually loud and cheerful, but I knew everyone was waiting until they finished reading. Mom and Mel sipped tea while Sean, Dad, and I had some beer. When Dad finished reading, he handed the folder to Sean and stood up. "Help me out, Danny," he said. I followed him into the kitchen where he hugged me tightly. It felt like I could hardly breathe. I melted into his embrace like I did when I was a kid. His arms always felt safe. When we finally let go, he held my face and looked hard into my eyes. It's not your fault, Danny. You have always treated that person with love. If you ever start to doubt yourself, call me or your mom. Don't let this break you. She isn't worth it. I nodded, too afraid to say anything, worried I might cry. Sensing my struggle, Dad kept holding my face and looking into my eyes, trying to give me strength. You will get through this, Danny, I promise. You have a family who loves you and will support you no matter what. I knew Dad cared, but reminders like this always helped. He let go of my face and pulled me in for another hug. He patted my back, then went to the kettle, filled it with water, and turned it on. He moved to the fridge and took out 3 sodas, handing them to me. We need clear heads. Once we have a plan, we can relax with a few beers or some brandy, he explained. We went back to the others. I saw Sean and Mel, who had been sharing the folder, looked almost done. Sean was quiet, his jaw tight, showing how angry he was. He never showed his anger easily. In my whole life, I had seen him truly lose his temper only a few times, but during those moments, his silence always came before a big outburst. The saying, "the calm before the storm," fit him well. But Mel was talking to herself, her face red with what looked like a mix of fear and anger. She checked if Sean was done too, and then threw the folder back on the table, clearly disgusted. If I hadn't seen it myself, I would never have believed they could do something so terrible. Dad sat down again and looked at Mom. I boiled the kettle for you and Mel, dear. It should be ready now. I'll do it, Mom, I said, feeling like I was about to burst. Mel grabbed the kettle, almost knocking the lid off. So, are you going to divorce her? Sean asked. Yes, divorce is my only choice, I said. Everyone nodded. Mel came back and filled Mom's cup. Divorce is okay, but you should make them pay for what they did. I couldn't lie. I had imagined many clever ways to get them back, but then I stopped, sighing. But I don't want to sink to their level. I'm scared that if I do, I won't be able to come back from it. I don't want to lose who I am. You won't have to, Mom said. Really? Their own words and actions will show everyone what they did. Now she had our full attention. We can make a public announcement and tell the local news. It will officially say you are separated. You haven't done anything wrong, so we don't need to hide anything. We can clearly say the breakup happened because Claire cheated on you with someone in your family. You can even name Zach if you want. Then we can send a polite note or email to all our family and friends, including Claire's family, explaining what happened. We can share all the details, names, and dates, and let them know we have real proof to show if they want it. We will make copies of the letters and email them to everyone who is curious or loves gossip. Anyone who asks, and I promise they will ask, will get to see the letters. Like I said, Danny, you haven't done anything wrong. You have always treated Claire well. I thought about Mom's plan. It was clear, honest, and strong. Plus, I would keep my dignity. What about Aunt Sally? Sean asked. We'll have to accept that she won't leave Zach. She is his mother, after all. But if she stays with him, she can face the same consequences. I won't let anyone treat my boys the way Zach and Claire treated you, Danny." Mom's voice was firm, but I saw the sadness in her eyes. Losing her sister hurt her. "Maybe we can find a way to really embarrass them," I said. "Like putting up posters all over town or posting videos online. I feel like we need to do more." I felt really happy when I saw how much Mel cared for me and our family. Her loyalty was strong. Sean was lucky to marry her. I couldn't picture her turning against him like Claire had turned against me. Looking at my family made me feel grateful. Without asking, my fight became theirs too. That was something Claire could never take from me. "We could, sweetheart, but think about it for a minute. Forget about any legal issues for now. If you had to choose between having the man you like hate you or not care about you at all, what would you pick?" Mel thought hard about her mom's question. "I hate to say it, but I would rather he hated me because that would mean I mattered to him in some way. Hate can turn to love. If he didn't care, it would mean I didn't exist for him. I wouldn't want to feel useless, like I was thrown aside." Exactly. To me, the opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. Claire would feel worse if Danny acted like she didn't matter at all than if he shouted angry words. She is a proud girl. She wouldn't like being seen as unimportant. But Mom, you're assuming that she cares about what I think. Given how she has acted in these letters, maybe she doesn't. Oh, she cares. Danny, she wants you. It may not be the reason you hoped for, but she wants you. If that wasn't true, she would not have stayed around for 12 years. She also tried hard to hide her real self. No matter her reasons, she didn't want you to see through her tricks. "Yeah, she just wanted an easy mark to support her life," I said, feeling bitter. A flood of thoughts came out quickly, each rushing to be heard. "You're not an easy mark. You just trust people. That's different. You're not a fool. Don't let her make you feel that way. Don't give her that much power. You're not the fool here. She is. She had a great man who would do anything for her, and she walked away from him. Thanks, everyone, but I still feel stupid and used. She tricked me for 12 years. I had no clue. If I hadn't found those letters, I would still be trying so hard to make her happy." "Well, then we're all fools," my mom said, "because doubts aside, none of us ever saw this coming." "Son, you're not a fool. And neither are we," my dad said firmly, not willing to hear any argument. "When you love someone and get married, you trust that person. That's how it works. You keep trusting until they break that trust. Claire did a good job hiding her lies. You weren't supposed to find out until she slipped up. It would be sad if we went into every relationship thinking the worst of people." "Okay, so what you're saying is that I should hide how hurt and angry I am and make Claire think I don't care?" Mom nodded. "Yes. Let her try to explain herself. Information is important. She might even get caught in her own lies. Give her enough rope to hang herself," she added. "I would even record your talks with her. Your phone can do that, right?" She paused, seeing my expression. "Honey, I know this will be hard to deal with. Maybe try not to listen while she talks. That's actually a good idea. It will help you stay calm. Every time she pauses, just shrug or say something like, 'Never mind,' or 'I have things to do.' Look at your watch to seem bored. Talk as little as you can. Don't react to her tricks or pleas. She will try all of that at some point. But if I do that, I won't be able to say what I want to say to her. I don't want to keep all this inside me." Dad put his arm around my knee. "It's not forever, Danny. Think of it like a game. It's a strategy for the first move. She's the enemy, son. You don't want her to see your weaknesses. Later, when things settle down after your divorce, you can say everything you need or want to. Maybe it will be better then. You will have heard all her excuses, and you will know what to say calmly. If you do it this way, you can turn your words into a strong point against her. But if you try now, you might say things you will regret." I nodded. He was right. If I opened my mouth now, I would spill out all the accusations I wanted to say. I wouldn't be able to hide my hurt or my anger. I would drown her in my feelings, and then she would know how to push my buttons. We talked more, and Mom and Mel helped me practice looking indifferent and bored while they gave common excuses for being unfaithful. It didn't mean anything. It was just a mistake. I was lonely, and I love you only. He's nothing to me. By the time they were done, I was sure I could play my part, as long as the talk didn't go on for too long. Next chapter. Ready or not, I was happy to see that Claire wasn't waiting for me when I got home. I knew she wouldn't be far away since her workday usually ended just after 5. Now it was 5:15. I unloaded my things, feeling a knot in my stomach about the talk with Claire. No amount of deep breaths could relax me. I poured myself a bit of brandy and stared into the drink for a long moment before taking a sip. Closing my eyes, I swirled the drink around in my mouth, letting it coat my tongue before swallowing. I stepped into the warm glow. It felt nice, just what I needed. When the clock struck 5:40, someone knocked on the door. I took a few deep breaths and looked in the mirror to check my face. I wanted to keep a calm look. I was almost ready. I picked up my phone, set it to record, and put it in my pocket with the keys. Now I was ready. Walking down the hallway felt slow, like I was moving through thick mud. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch, making Claire take a step back. The door closed quietly behind me, and her familiar scent hit me hard like a punch in the stomach. I quickly started breathing through my mouth. "Danny, where have you been? Why haven't you answered my calls or emails? And did you change the locks?" She was clearly angry. It suddenly hit me that she didn't know I had found out about the love letters. She thought I didn't know about her affair. At that moment, I decided to keep that secret from her, let her find out through the news like everyone else. Then she could have her moment in the spotlight, just like the stars she admired. "Hey, Claire." I replied, "Yes, I changed the locks. With our 10th anniversary coming up, I realized I'm done pretending to love you just to keep from getting hurt all the time. Honestly, it's become boring and too much work. So, I'm going to divorce you." "What?" The look of shock on her face was amazing. I had to fight the urge to smile at her surprise. "You heard me. I don't love you. I don't need you, so I'm kicking you out." "You can't do that. I don't believe you. I love you. You love me." "I don't understand. This is my home, too." Her words showed her confusion, and a part of me that didn't like her enjoyed seeing her this way. "I just told you I don't love you. I was pretending. I can kick you out, and I just did. Here are the keys to the storage unit where I put your things. If I missed anything, just email me, and I will pack it up for you." She took the keys and stared at them as if they were strange. "But this is my house, too. You can't kick me out. I have just as much right to be here." "But if you move in, I'll move out. Who will finish the repairs? I'm not paying for an apartment I don't live in, so if you really want to stay in this unfinished house, go ahead. But you'll be the one to pay the bank and handle all the work. I won't give a cent." Tears rolled down Claire's face. My heart ached, and I fought the urge to comfort her. I glanced at my watch to seem calm. "I don't understand, Danny. What's happening? When I left for the spa, you told me you loved me and kissed me goodbye. And now you want a divorce?" Her voice trembled. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Yes, I want a divorce." "Why? What happened? Did you meet someone else? Are you seeing someone?" I had to take deep breaths to stay calm and keep my face steady. My arms wanted to grab her and hold tight until she couldn't breathe. I wanted to see her eyes when she felt the hurt I felt. A part of me was gone, so part of her should go too. "No, I'm not seeing anyone. I'm just bored with you. I'm ready for something new." "Why, Danny? Why are you acting like this? I don't understand how you can change so quickly. How can you be so mean? This isn't like you. I was running out of patience. I needed to end this soon. Or I might lose my temper and say terrible things to her. Look, I'm going out tonight. I need to shower and change. Can we talk about this later?" She stood there with her mouth open, tears streaming down her face. She didn't seem to get it. I walked back into the house, leaving her on the porch crying. Inside, I leaned against the wall. This act was tiring. How did she deal with it for 12 years? Next chapter. I leaned back in my chair and read what I had written again. Thank goodness for laptops. If I had used pen and paper, I would have wasted so much paper rewriting the divorce notice. I didn't need to send the paper to separate from Claire, but I wanted to for many reasons. Daniel Jonathan McCormick, born January 12, 1982, declare that as of March 21, 2017, I have separated from my wife, Claire Elizabeth McCormick, born November 11, 1985. I found out she broke our wedding vows because of her long-term relationship with someone in my family. I will not be responsible for Claire's debts. From the date above. I glanced at the corner of the screen. It was already past 9 and I was tired. The notice wasn't long, under 100 words. It should have taken minutes, not hours. I couldn't decide how much to write or if I should include Zach's name. I changed the text so many times that I couldn't think clearly. I closed the program, planning to look at it fresh in the morning. I set the laptop on the table and thought about whether to watch a movie or go to bed and try to sleep. I was still thinking about my choice when I heard a knock on the door. I thought it was Claire coming back. I looked down and took a deep breath, hoping for some calm and strength. On my way to the door, I paused in front of the mirror to see if I looked okay and set my phone to record. I opened the door. It was Claire's dad and Sean. They smiled at me. "Nice bored face, son," we all laughed. It felt good. I stepped aside and they walked into the kitchen like they had been there many times before. They grabbed some beers from the fridge. Sean said, "I see you weren't kidding about fixing things up." I smirked while sitting on the couch. "I keep my promises. So, did your mom send you to check on me?" "No, it was my idea. But we aren't here to babysit you. We're here to help you have some fun." Sean smiled. "We thought you needed to get back at that jerk more than just feeling embarrassed. But if your mom asks, we just played cards and had some drinks." "Daddy, you sly dog," I chuckled. "A little lie won't hurt her feelings." He winked. "And it might help your mom if she wants to have some fun." Sean and I laughed. "Your mom is kind and I care for her, but like many women, she doesn't see how men think." My dad shrugged and smiled. "Sometimes a man has to do what he has to do." "Seriously? What about all the talks you gave Sean and me about not taking action ourselves? You always said that 2 wrongs don't make a right. Maybe I've tried too hard to teach you what's right. Let me ask you, Danny, if Zach had come to your house a month ago and told you he was going to take Claire from you right then, would you have stood up to him? Would you have fought for her?" "Of course," I replied. My dad raised an eyebrow. That made me think. "Oh, I see. It's about time," Sean said. "The only difference is that the jerk didn't have the courage to say it directly to you." "True, but Claire is also to blame. She might have started it. The letters she wrote make it sound like she helped with the things they did. And I can't just hit her, right?" "No, you can't. But we'll handle her a different way," my dad said. "As for your cousin, he should have said no. He was your friend and should have just walked away." But he didn't. "Okay, I see your point. Let's figure out how I can do this without ending up in trouble." The weekend went by quicker than I thought it would. My family rarely left me alone. They had me make plans with Dad and Sean, which were a bit different from what Mom and Mel were doing. It turned out to be the best choice. It helped me focus and kept my sadness and pain away. More importantly, it turned my boiling anger into something calm and clear. I was able to think clearly and build something positive instead of being destructive. Mom and Mel edited my ad and made sure it was in the local newspaper, a free paper, and another popular one from a nearby town that was known for its sports news. The ad showed up in all those newspapers the next Monday and ran every day for that week. Mom, bless her heart, wanted everyone in our town to see it. Claire called me a few times and even wrote a long letter. I sent her calls to voicemail where she left very long messages. They all said pretty much the same thing. She loves me. She wants me not to throw away our love and the 12 happy years we had together. I scoffed. Hadn't she looked through her things and noticed her love letters were gone? I had packed her books again, but didn't she realize yet? Did she really think I didn't know about her affair? Was she trying to play games with me? Did she really think I didn't know my own feelings? Apparently, yes. The only awkward time was Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's when Claire showed up just as we were about to eat. Mel and Sean took Maddie and Declan outside so they wouldn't hear what happened between Mom and Claire. Thank goodness they did, because Claire put on quite a show. She cried and yelled, which made me admire my mom even more. Mom stayed calm and didn't fall for Claire's emotional act. "Please, Ellie, you have to stand up for me. I don't know what's wrong with Danny. He's acting so strange. Maybe he's having a breakdown. Please, I'm begging you, talk to him. He loves me, I know he does. He can't just stop loving me overnight." Mom replied, "As far as I'm concerned, he never really loved you. If you didn't make him love you after 12 years, I doubt another chat will change anything." Now, if you don't mind, I have guests and dinner to prepare." Then she shut the door in Claire's face. The next part of the story is Monday evening. Claire must have read or got the breakup notice. At 5:30, she showed up crying and talking about the same old cheating story. Luckily, Sean came over after work. Just having him there helped me stay calm. I was thankful for my family. Don't let Danny be alone too much. Plan. I knew he would help me if it looked like I was losing control or not following our plan. "Danny, you have to trust me. It's not what you think. I can explain. Really." Did she actually believe I was that foolish? Maybe she was just trying to make excuses. After all, she had tricked me for 12 years. But still, what else could I think? Standing next to Danny and watching her walk down the aisle felt wrong. Did she really want to have a baby with me? Did she think she could make me believe it was all innocent? "Look, it doesn't matter, Claire. It just shows it's time to move on. Our marriage is over." "No!" Claire shouted loudly. I was sure the neighbors heard. It seemed my mom was right. For some reason, Claire wanted to save our marriage. That couldn't be true. "I love you, Danny. Please let me explain. You need to let me explain." "I don't owe you anything, Claire. Explaining what's going on with my cousin is pointless. I don't care. Please, Danny. I know I hurt you and I never meant to. Let me explain." I sighed, feeling frustrated. I had given her a chance to explain, not because I wanted to listen to her lies. Thanks to my family, I had finally stopped needing that. My mom had offered Claire a chance to tell her side, even if it ended up being a mistake. The days of her looking at me with sad eyes to get her way were over. "What's the point, Claire? You need to understand, Danny. If you let me explain, I know I can make you see." I looked at my watch. "Okay, I'll come over tomorrow at 5:30. You'll have 30 minutes. My voice was sharp, making it clear I didn't really want to. "Thank you, Danny. You won't regret it, I promise. Where do you want to meet?" "Here." I didn't trust her at all. I wanted more than just a recording on my phone. I needed to be alone, but also needed someone there in case things went wrong. If we were at my house, I could have a family member close by. "Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much." Claire stepped closer and put her hands on my shoulders. She leaned in for a kiss, and I could see her intentions. Did she think that if she tried to charm me, I would forgive everything? I couldn't tell if she was being sincere or just deluding herself. I grabbed her hands and stepped back, pushing her away. She lost her balance and stumbled. I couldn't hide my disgust. "Please don't show me any kindness. I'm really sorry. I love you and I miss you, Danny. Whatever you say, Claire. I'll see you tomorrow night." Next chapter. Tuesday started off bright and clear, with no warning of what would happen later. I was finishing up a nice kitchen countertop made of Jared wood when I got a call from a local radio station. Haley, one of the hosts of the morning show, Oscar and Haley, had seen my breakup announcement. She recognized my name because she was friends with Dee, who is one of my cousins. I guess it's true what they say. It's a small world. Haley reached out to Dee, who told my mom and Mel. They were happy to share my letters with my cousin, and with their okay, she gave them to Haley. I felt torn between being upset that my private life was on display and feeling a bit happy that maybe Claire and Zach would feel embarrassed too. To say I was embarrassed would be an understatement. I felt like I wasn't good enough for my wife and that I let her down. But they say revenge can lead to trouble. If my trouble is feeling ashamed, then I'll take it. What do I care what strangers think of me? The people I care about know who I really am. And deep down, I thought that mattered, even when I doubted myself. I talked a long time with Haley. She seemed kind and understanding. Somehow, having her ask about my life didn't feel wrong. Dee had apparently shared some extra things with her that gave me some strength. It felt like my family was on my side. I agreed to be interviewed on the radio Friday morning. I let them use some of my letters on my website and Facebook page, making sure it would be appropriate. Some parts may have to be hidden, but she promised that the main idea would stay clear. They will spend the next few days discussing cheating and want listeners to share their stories. My interview will wrap up their talk. We agreed to meet the next day so I can sign a paper to allow it. If the show goes well and the audience reacts like Haley thinks they will, Claire and Zach might face judgment from others. They probably won't go to jail, which is too bad. But then again, not all prisons have bars. Next chapter. I looked around and felt embarrassed. My clothes weren't the best for meeting someone at a coffee shop. I stepped out of the truck, brushed off my jeans and t-shirt to get rid of the sawdust. I cleaned off my work boots too. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. I had no choice. I needed to earn money, and I didn't have time to go home and change my clothes. When I walked into the nice cafe that Haley chose, I paused to look around. I had seen Haley's face on billboards and ads for her Oscar show. I noticed her blonde head in one of the booths. Good. We would have some privacy. I watched her check her watch and then look up. I smiled and raised my hand to say hello. She did the same and smiled back. She was of average height, but that was the only normal thing about her. In reality, she looked much better than in the pictures. Her hair reminded me of Meg Ryan from that movie with Matthew Broderick, Addicted to Something. It was like love in some funny way. I couldn't remember if her hair was short and messy, sticking out everywhere with long bangs covering her forehead. "Daniel?" she asked. Her voice had a rough edge to it, reminding me of Emma Stone or Demi Moore. "Please call me Danny." Her smile got bigger and we shook hands. Her grip was nice and firm. "I think I already know you," she said as she sat down. "Back in high school, Dee used to talk a lot about you and Sean. She'd probably be upset with me for telling you this, but she often wished you two weren't cousins." "Well, you can tell her that Sean has wished the same thing too," Haley laughed, and it was a warm sound that made me feel good. "You didn't know?" I chuckled. "I was too busy staring at Julie Clark the whole time. Picture Dolly Parton and you'll get it. She was amazing." "I hope you don't mind, but I ordered you a cappuccino. I thought it was the safest choice," Haley said. "That's nice. Thank you." We exchanged awkward smiles, unsure of how to start talking about the big problem between us. It was a bit comforting. Her unease with the topic showed me she cared, that my hurt wasn't just a normal thing for her. When I looked into her eyes, I was surprised to find they weren't blue or gray like I had imagined. They were very green. I couldn't remember ever seeing such green eyes before. They didn't sparkle like jewels, but glimmered like the shiny leaves of a peace lily, usually on my mother's dining table. She reached out and touched my hand. "I've read the letters, Danny," she said. "They're terrible. I can't imagine how you felt when you found them. Can you tell me what happened?" I studied her, looking for any signs of lying. I didn't see any. "Can we wait to talk about what should stay private? There are some things I really don't want to share with just anyone." "Sure. Here's a simpler version of the text." "Of course, that's clear. I need to know not because I'm curious or for any strange reason, but so I can prepare my questions. I should warn you that Oscar can be rude and might say some funny but sharp things to get a laugh or stir things up. I promise I'll only share what you're okay with letting our audience hear." I nodded and took a deep breath. I looked at my hands holding my large coffee mug. Thank goodness she ordered a big one. I needed every bit of it. I tried to look at her while sharing my story, but found it hard to meet her eyes. Whenever I looked up, she was watching me with a serious but kind face. I told her everything, not just about the letters, but also about Claire, who I thought I knew, and about our marriage. There was something about Haley that made me want to tell the truth. But as I spoke, I wondered if it was smart to be so open. I hoped my trust wasn't wasted. That's it. It doesn't look good, does it? No, it feels like a bad movie. That's what Mel said. If I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't have believed it. It's just too strange. It feels unreal that two normal people could act like this. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Yeah, and I was just a fool who didn't see it coming. Don't blame yourself, Danny. You didn't see the signs because you weren't looking for them. And why would you? You thought you were happily married. I studied communications and took some psychology classes. They call it something special. What was it? Haley closed her eyes and tapped her forehead a few times. I couldn't help but smile. It was a cute gesture. Then she brightened up. It's called confirmatory bias. I raised my eyebrows. Wow, that sounds confusing. What does it mean? When you love someone and think they love you back, it changes how you see what they say and do. Basically, you believed Claire loved you. So everything she did just made you more sure of that. Finding those letters was like a wake-up call. So I'm not a fool? Not at all. I smiled. That's nice to hear. Did you love her? Yes. I sighed. I loved the woman I thought she was. But the Claire in those letters wasn't the same person. I guess I was in love with a dream. That's hard to face. Yeah, you seem calm about it. I think I would have cried. It hurts, but I've tucked it away for now to handle later. What do you mean, tucked it away? Let me explain. It's like if you hurt your leg so badly that an infection sets in and it turns into something worse. Would you cry and complain about how unfair it was, letting the infection spread more in your leg? Or would you put the gun down, cut off your leg and feel sad later, knowing you saved the rest of it? Oh, I understand now. That makes sense. Like taking one bite at a time instead of trying to eat the whole loaf all at once. I nodded and took a sip of my coffee. I grimaced in disgust. It was still lukewarm. What are your plans for the future? Do you have any? Have you thought about it? Honestly, I feel a bit lost, like a boat without an anchor. Then I found the letter. My whole life used to be about Claire and our marriage. It was all about fixing the house, starting a family, and planning one last trip before we became parents. Now that's all gone. I took another sip of my lukewarm coffee, trying to gather my thoughts and hoping I could share them in a way that Haley would understand. I'm a carpenter. I work on the inside of buildings, making things like kitchens, playrooms, restaurants, and man caves. Usually it goes like this. The builder or architect gives me some plans. I talk to the owner and then design and build something that fits the space and their needs. Now it feels like I have to make a new plan for my life. The plan I've followed for the last 12 years has been ripped from my hands, and now I need to create a whole new life. It's scary. I know it will get easier over time. You just have to take it one day at a time. But it's still frightening. What are the rules now? What can I do? I need to think about what I want for my future. Haley reached out and put her hand on mine. That's very deep, almost poetic. We should use that in your interview. We talked some more and shared ideas for questions. She could help me steer the conversation in the right direction. I told her about my meeting with Claire, and we agreed to have a phone call on Thursday night in case we needed to adjust anything after that meeting. I waited for Haley to pay the bill. She said no to my offer. I opened the door for her and walked her to her car, a small, sporty Renault. It suited her. Let me guess. That's your car across the street? I smiled. What gave it away? The truck or all the toolboxes? Haley hummed. Both were big clues. But your license plate, Dan007, was the key hint. I laughed. Yeah, that's me. McCormick. Dan McCormick. I have a building license. Oh, and I'm a comedian too. What a funny combo. We laughed again and said goodbye. As I walked back to my truck, I realized that for a few precious moments I was happy. Truly happy. Next chapter, I frowned, stopping halfway. I was about to check the time again. I rested my hand on my chair and frowned more as my fingers tightened into fists. My knuckles went pale from how hard I was gripping. My throat felt tight, like a lump was stuck in it. I tried to swallow it away and winced at the pain. I gritted my teeth and slowly opened my hands, seeing the marks I left in the chair. Then, I lowered my chin to my chest like I was carrying a heavy load. I did this on purpose, but it was more because I was stubborn than because I really understood my feelings. The one thing I couldn't control was my heart. It was beating so loudly it sounded like a train. I wondered why. Was it anger, sadness, worry, or the love I still felt? No, it wasn't love. The woman I cared for was not the one who was about to knock on my door. This woman was not real. She was just in my mind. But I missed her. Losing her left a big gap in my life. I took a deep breath in and let it out slowly. I repeated this while sitting quietly, almost like a kind of meditation. It helped a bit, like a cool balm on a sore spot. Claire and I would never get the chance to fix things. Our relationship had burned down like ashes ever since she chose him. I didn't see it then. As I continued to breathe and waited for my heart to calm, I thought about the plan. Even though I wanted to yell at her, I knew I had to hold back. Claire would speak first, and I would just listen. I heard Sean come up behind me, though I didn't see him. I took one last deep breath and turned to face him. He smiled, placing a hand on my shoulder. All set. The camera's on the table and ready. I charged the battery last night, so you're good if something goes wrong, he said. Thanks for everything, Sean. He waved my thanks away. You do the same for me. Are you ready? More than ever. I want this to be over. Sean nodded. Yeah, I understand. It'll be boring, but you can handle it, Danny. Just one talk and everything will be behind you. I barely nodded before a loud bang startled us from down the hall. We looked at each other. Sean smiled and gave me a thumbs up while I tried to keep a neutral face. "I'll wait in the dining room while you let her in." I stretched my neck and shoulders to ease the tightness before heading to the hallway to meet my wife. One look at her showed she was nervous, and I actually found that amusing. It seemed her time at the spa didn't help. "Claire, follow me. We'll talk in the dining room." "Okay," she said, her heels clicking behind me as I walked to the back of the house. Sean was standing by the sliding glass doors that looked out onto the back patio. He turned when he heard us come in. I saw Claire's surprise when she spotted Sean next to me. "Hi, Sean," I said. Sean nodded in response. "I'll wait outside, Danny," he said, and then he stepped through the door. After one last look at me, he went inside. I turned to Claire and noticed her cheeks were red. I thought she probably knew why I had Sean there, to make sure she didn't try to blame me during our divorce. With Sean as a witness, she couldn't make any false claims against me. Plus, it helped me hide the fact that I was recording our talk. "Can I get you something to drink?" I asked. "Water, please," she replied. I set her glass down where guests usually sat before taking my usual seat at the table. Maybe it was a little too subtle, but I wasn't worried. As she paused before sitting down, I acted like I had all the time in the world. I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of my water. I stayed quiet and just watched her. "Danny, I'm so glad we can finally talk. I've missed you so much," Claire began. "I know you might not want to hear this, but I have to say it. I still love you." I interrupted. "Don't, Claire, I don't love you, and I really don't want to hear your feelings. You've wasted your time." Her face showed shock for just a tick. Then she quickly got annoyed, like I was a silly puppy who couldn't learn a trick. Did she really think saying she loved me would erase everything? She looked down at her hands, holding the glass of water, perhaps to hide how she felt. "I don't believe you. You can't just turn it off like a switch," she said, looking at me for a moment, but I didn't respond. Her words didn't affect me at all. I watched her frown and look at her hands again. "I'm sorry I hurt you, Danny. That was not what I wanted," she said. "I want you to know it wasn't your fault. It was something separate from us." "Separate from us?" I echoed, waiting for her to say more. She paused, expecting me to speak. I didn't. I wanted to shout at her. "Did you forget that you brought someone else into our marriage? That has everything to do with me. Are you going to say it was for my own good next?" I pressed my back harder against the chair to keep from jumping up and yelling. "I want you to tell me how you're having a good time with my cousin and that it has nothing to do with me. How can that be? It was good for me, for us. Please explain how that wasn't a betrayal. How was it not a stab in the back? How was it not unfair?" I took a sip of water and thought, "Danny, there's a lot you don't know about me, things I didn't want you to find out." I felt the urge to raise my eyebrows in a sarcastic way, but I stayed calm. I kept saying to myself, calm, neutral, boring, over and over again. Like, I grew up in Broken Hill. It's a small town. Everyone seems to know everyone. I was seen as a bit of a wild child. She sighed and looked away, showing how embarrassed she was. Her face was red all the way down to her neck. I had a bad reputation. When my dad got a new job in Kiama during my last year of high school, I decided to change my life. She looked at me, waiting for me to react. I stayed quiet, so she went on. I mostly succeeded. But as I found out, the fun party life was hard to resist. There were times I felt like I needed to break free. It was tough to live a strict life after my wild days. I solved this by going out a few times a month. I traveled to Sydney or Wollongong or down south to Navarra, anywhere I wasn't known. I had a great time. After that, I could be a good girl for the rest of the month. She took another pause, looking at me to see if I would say anything. I kept my face blank. Then I got a job offer to move to Newcastle. I met you a month after arriving, and you were so kind and fun. For a while, I didn't feel the urge to go wild again. But after 6 months, the feeling came back. I had to go to Sydney for work for a week, and, well, I gave in. On the last night, I ran into Zach. He saw me with someone I shouldn't have been with and confronted me. At first, I thought he would scold me, but he didn't. Oh, it's so hard to say. He told me he liked that kind of girl. That's how everything started. Tears filled her eyes and fell onto her blouse. You have to know it was just part of the game between him and me. I didn't mean for it to be serious. It's hard to explain. She looked away, feeling ashamed. It was really just about filling a need for fun, nothing more. I didn't want love or care from him. I wanted it from you because I love you. I didn't want to live with him. You're the one I want to be with forever. I never, ever loved him. It was never the same with him as it is with you. I felt disgusted but kept my feelings in check. I couldn't stop my thoughts, but inside they were criticizing her. So now you're crazy. Great, thanks for sharing. Danny, please try to see it my way. He met a need, nothing more. It was just physical, not emotional, not that it made a difference. I struggled to stay quiet and calm. I felt the urge to speak up. A sour taste filled my mouth, knowing I could only respond in my head. I told myself to wait for a better time. Someday I would say these things out loud. I didn't want to hurt you, Danny. I wish I could undo everything. Did she really mean it? How could she picture this happening? It was clear she would hurt me. The only thing I didn't know was when. How could she not see that? And once she understood, it was too late. The horse was out of the barn. It charged away, trampling my heart. Tears filled my eyes and slowly rolled down my cheeks. Were they real? Were they part of her trick? To be honest, it didn't matter if they were real or fake because nothing relied on them. And the outcome of our talk. Please say something, Danny. Please say you get it. You didn't. I truly thought that if you didn't know, you wouldn't get hurt. I wanted to keep you safe. Keep us safe. Our love. Our sweet love. Being with him once or twice a month. I could be a good wife to you the rest of the time. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please love me enough to forgive me. Her begging and apologies shocked me. It was clear she didn't see herself as a bad person. Maybe not totally innocent, but definitely not a villain. She saw herself as a victim of her own choices, as she called them. Did she really think I should just forgive her and ignore that she was unfaithful to meet her need once or twice a month? How could she not see what her words meant? I had already said that the Claire in the letters wasn't the Claire I loved. Now I knew that for sure. Her pretending allowed her to play a part, the part of the sweet wife. It was just an act. Sweet Claire might have been more common, but that didn't change the fact that the real Claire was selfish. She shifted around, my silence making her uneasy. Danny, please say something. I need to know what you're thinking. Please give me another chance. We've been happy for 12 years. You were happy. We can be happy again if you let me fix this. Please let me come home. Make things right. How do you fix over 10 years of lies? Disrespect. That was all I managed to say. One word. Danny, please. I know I did something awful. I'll spend my life being the best wife I can be if you just give me another chance. Does our marriage mean nothing to you? Can you really just walk away like that? I picked up my glass and drank the last bit of water, trying to cool down the anger boiling inside me. What she said hurt me. Would I really give up on our marriage? It felt like she was the one who had given up on us long before we even started. She pretended to be someone else, and that caused us trouble from the beginning. I closed my eyes and took another sip. I imagined floating in the calm, cool water of a pond and started to count. By 10, I felt steadier. Yes, I can walk away and not look back. I glanced at my watch. Your time is up. Tears turned into loud cries. Danny, I love only you. I've always been yours. She was just going through the motions. Don't give up on us, Danny. Please, give me one more chance. I can make you trust me again. I can make you love me again. Just let me try. I've learned. I won't let you down again. That's enough, Claire. Please calm down. The meeting is over. I stood up, not looking at her, and walked to the front door. I opened it and waited. I stood there for a long time. Finally, she came toward me, walking slowly, almost like she was going to her end. She stopped next to me and looked up at me with sad eyes. I love you, Danny. I love you so much. Can't we try counseling? Please think about it. Counseling won't help. I don't love you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other plans tonight. I closed the door softly, proud I didn't slam it. I turned and walked down the hall, hearing Claire's sobs behind me, but I didn't stop or look back. Next chapter, Sean was in the dining room, leaning on a chair and taking a camera from the top shelf. He set it on the table. Are you okay? He asked, squeezing my arm. I knew he was ready to hug me if I needed it, but I felt too angry for comfort. Did you hear anything? A little? Can you believe what she did? She lied, cheated, and betrayed me for 12 years. 12 years of disrespect. She thinks that saying she's sorry and crying will fix things. Nothing can change the fact that she was unfaithful to me for over a decade. Those years are lost for good. No matter how hard she tries to make amends, it will always be part of our past. She made the choice to betray me without even talking to me first, and now she wants to cry about it. The only reason she wants me back is that she doesn't want to face what she's done. She's worried you might lose your good reputation with her family and friends. I agree, Danny. Whatever world she lives in, it's not the real one. Yeah, I see that. I think she thinks her affair is the same as when she borrowed my car and crashed it, or when she accidentally washed my new phone. But Danny, Sean mimicked Claire's voice, I'm hooked on being wild, so I can't be blamed for what I do. I snorted and walked back and forth in front of the glass doors. Can you believe she said that? She thinks if I don't know about her affair, it won't hurt me. That's so wrong, Sean. I had to hold myself back from jumping over the table and losing it. Just because I didn't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt me. It's like saying you don't have cancer just because you didn't know it was there for a long time. Good luck telling that to someone with cancer. Whether you see it or not, it's still wrecking you inside, slowly taking you down until it can't hide anymore. Sean patted me on the back and went to the fridge. He got out a couple of beers and handed one to me. Here, you deserve this. Man, I was really proud of you. I'm not sure I could have stayed calm while she was talking nonsense. You even scared me. You sounded so serious, like a tough school principal. Didn't you feel sorry for her? Did you think about working things out? No, not at all. When I looked at her, I just felt sick. She seemed like an actress pretending. Nothing she said or did made me think our marriage mattered to her. If it did, she wouldn't have given in to her desires and invited him over again and again. She did things for him that she never did for me. With me, she acted like a sweet girl. And you read her letters? Wow. She asked him to be the father of our kids. I've been asking her for so long to start a family, and she was going to deny me even that? That's not love. That's hate. But even without all this, I refuse to live in fear, always wondering who the real Claire is. I don't want to feel sick in my stomach all the time, worrying every time she's late or seems off, or, worse, if she's in the mood. I keep wondering if she's really with me, or if she's just imagining some other guy when we're together. I can't tell you how relieved I was to hear you say that, Danny. Honestly, I was worried she would get to you and somehow make you forgive her. I would understand if you did. You've put a lot of time and feelings into her, and I would support you if that's what you wanted, but I can't see any happiness for you if you go that way. I nodded, still pacing. I felt like a bull ready to charge. I don't get it. If Claire wanted to have fun, then why did she marry you? Why not just date casually? She could have worked hard at her job and dated different people. If either of you got bored or found someone else you liked, you could just move on without any bad feelings. I nodded. Sean was right. If she wanted to have fun, why get married? Unless a guy liked that kind of thing. It wouldn't end well, no matter who she married. I agreed. I think marriage is special because when you stand in front of family and friends and say your vows, you really mean it. You promise to be faithful forever. When you promise, you are saying she is the only woman you will be with, and she promises to be yours alone. What makes a marriage special is this promise of faithfulness. Without it, how is it different from casual dating? Why make a commitment? Why go through the work and sacrifices needed for a good marriage? Without her faithfulness, there was nothing special between us. If there isn't trust and a promise to stay true to each other, I don't see how we can feel close. Without that, she was just another person to me. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but to me it's clear. It's black or white, not gray. Either she is mine or she's not. There are no middle options for me. And even if she said she was mine, she really wasn't. She was just pretending. Wow, I don't think Mom or Mel could have said it better. You should say some of that when they interview you. He winked at me. Since when did you become a smart guy, Dr. Dan? Probably from all that sawdust you've breathed in over the years. I laughed. Sean's jokes helped ease my anger. Well, at least I didn't get hit by lightning, which is what you need to get through to your thick head. We clinked our beer bottles together. See? It's good to have my brother back. Do you think Claire really believes what she's saying? I asked. Who knows? Maybe she just can't face the truth. I shrugged. Well, for her, the truth isn't pretty. Sean smirked. She let me down. I thought she'd at least understand why you were upset. I laughed, a big, deep laugh like I'd heard the best joke ever. It would take a year of partying to even compare to what she and that guy did. Next chapter. On Thursday night, I sat on the back patio enjoying the sunset. I was freshly showered, holding a beer with my laptop on my lap, while I talked to Haley on the phone. I told her briefly about Claire's visit, not wanting to make things worse while we talked. I opened my email and read Haley's latest questions. I talked them over with her, pretending I didn't care. She asked them in a way that let me talk more about ideas, instead of showing how hurt and angry I really felt. I just hoped I wouldn't lose my calm and let her see my real feelings. When Oscar started asking questions and making jokes, we couldn't talk about all the letters we had. If we took out all the X's and a few other words, some parts would still be there. If you go on Facebook, you can find them. We started sharing them this morning. We posted one and put the same thing on our website. More posts are coming in the next few hours. They are getting a lot of comments. Most people are shocked. There are a few who think it's okay, and a couple who joke that they want to know who this person is. But don't worry. I made sure to hide Claire's name and yours in all the pictures we used, so she can't take you to court or anything. I'm not on Facebook, I said. Haley laughed. Why doesn't that surprise me? But you should think about it. If not for your personal stuff, then for work. She said she would email me the pictures we used. A moment later, the email arrived. I opened the first 3, and it turned out that Claire Razak and I wouldn't be easily identified by the letters. This was important. I didn't want to pay that liar for telling some big lawyer that I had invaded her space. In our letters and interviews, I would be D, Claire would be S for snake, and Zach would just be R. I didn't want to use Z for rat Zach, just to cover myself. Any friends or family who asked for copies from my mom or Mel would know who I meant. I was sure word would get out from there. If I was lucky, Claire and Rat Zach would be so embarrassed that they would leave town. I felt okay with what I had done. I wasn't trying to get back at them, it just happened on its own. I just wanted to give people honest answers to questions and not hide what they did. I thought if they didn't feel bad about their actions, they had nothing to hide. If they didn't want to face the consequences, they shouldn't do anything wrong. I wanted to keep Haley talking, but I knew she needed to sleep early, and I had to work out. I boiled some pasta and looked over the love letters, just in case someone talked about them in an interview. Then I started working on my answers to Haley's questions, changing them as I went. By the time I was done, my answers were strong and clear. It felt powerful to express myself like that. Next, I introduced Danny to Oscar. My greeting was simple, while Oscar's was full of energy. I thought he might have a hard time sitting still. Even as he was sitting, he seemed to be moving all the time. It was clear that he and Haley got along just as well in real life as they did on the show. They joked around just like Sean and I did. I wondered if they were dating off the show. Their assistant, Zoe, hurried around me, putting coffee and apple Danish in front of me. She quickly showed me how to use the microphone and headset. I felt the weight of reality. I was about to share personal stuff with an audience that could be hundreds of thousands strong. Suddenly, I felt sick. My stomach tightened, trying to keep the swarm of nervous feelings that had settled in my gut from spilling out. I wasn't sure if I was feeling it in my belly or my throat. All I knew was that I wanted to calm down before I made a fool of myself. A commercial played. When it ended, I switched on. I looked at Haley in panic. "It's going to be okay, Danny," she whispered. "Everyone's nervous. Once we ask the first question, you'll feel better." I nodded, but I doubted that I wouldn't squeak like a mouse when I spoke. Haley took charge of the intro and the first part of the interview. She was right. By the third question, I forgot that thousands of people were listening to me. She guided me through the conversation, and I was happy I could use comparisons like gangrene and project plans instead of sounding foolish. Oscar said forgiveness was never in his plans. "You don't love us enough to forgive her for her mistakes," I said. But instead of answering that, let me ask this. Why couldn't she love me enough to stay faithful or at least be honest? Good point. But I had to ask, how did she keep it a secret for 12 years? Were you blind, Oscar? I guess, in a way, yes. A friend of mine who studied psychology told me something about this. I looked at Haley, who was not pleased. I think it's called confirmation bias, I said carefully. But maybe I shouldn't mention it. Wow, what does that mean? Oscar laughed. Sounds scary. It doesn't mean I'm a sociopath, does it? Should I get security or attack you with ninja skills? Haley snorted. Ninja skills? Really? You're an origami expert? You can fold your enemy into a pretzel? I couldn't help but laugh. Well, I better behave then. I can't make good pretzels. I became serious again. I'm a salesperson, not a psychologist, so please hope I don't mess up my answers. The main point is that when you believe someone loves you, you see what they say or do in a way that fits that belief. I looked at Haley for support. She gave me a thumbs up. So, you're saying that for 12 years you thought she loved you and only noticed good things about her? That's why you didn't see signs she was cheating? Yes, that's right. Here's a simpler version of the text. That's pretty much what happened. I smiled. Now that I heard that explanation, I'm going to stick with it. It makes me feel less foolish. Everyone, we have a lot of calls coming in for D, so please be patient. We will get back to you soon. Hello, S. What do you want to ask, D? Can you find it in your heart to forgive? R. The woman's voice was high-pitched, which might seem nervous to someone who didn't know her. But I knew her. The caller was my Aunt Sally. After all, he is your cousin. Too bad R never talked about that when he met my wife or sent her those letters. He seemed to forget we were family. Every time he lied to me, it hurt. So no, I can't forgive him. He's out of my life for good. I felt bad for my aunt as she cried, but I couldn't lie to her. I caught a look from Oscar and Haley, who noticed we were related. Oscar smoothly finished the call, helping S off the line without trouble. Haley whispered to me, "Are you okay?" I nodded, even though my heart hurt. I hoped there wouldn't be too many calls like that. The next call made me blush. "Honey, you have a lovely voice. If you get tired of building things, you should think about a job as a radio host. If you need comfort, just call me." Oscar laughed. "Thanks, B. We'll make sure to get your number to D. I'm sure you'll help lift D's spirits." I thought Oscar was joking, but a few minutes later Zoe was smiling widely as she put a note in front of me. Sure enough, Bev, or B, had left me her number. The calls kept coming. Most were kind and wished me well. One caller sounded like a friend of Claire's. She asked if I could find a way to forgive the mistake. A mistake? I'm not sure I can call it that. To me, a mistake is something small, like buying lemon essence instead of lemon juice or making a wrong turn. Maybe washing colors with whites and ruining her delicate clothes. That's a mistake. This was something that happened again and again over 12 years. It involved planning and lying. It couldn't be called a mistake. When the call ended, I turned from Haley to Oscar. Oops, looks like we lost G. Many calls gave suggestions on how to deal with the loss. From meditation to spending time in nature, one even suggested using puppets to express my feelings. Oscar couldn't resist making a joke, comparing it to the Cookie Monster. I wanted to complain. I liked the Cookie Monster as a kid. According to Haley and Oscar, the show was a hit. Zoe laughed, adding that only Justin Bieber and Hugh Jackman got more phone numbers. Dude, it sounds like you'll have enough support to get through this next chapter. The interview didn't go smoothly. At 5:30, my soon-to-be ex-wife, very angry, knocked hard on my door. Daniel McCormick opened it right away. I looked up and saw my dad, who was supposed to watch the kids that night. The show was starting. Just don't give her what she wants, Danny. She wants you to react, so stay calm. I nodded. I walked down the hallway and opened the door. I even smiled a little. Good evening, Claire. How could you? How could you share my letters on the radio? She shouted. You're the reason they're all over Facebook. Her cheeks were red with anger. If looks could hurt, I'd be in big trouble. They were mine. They were private. You had no right to show them to anyone. I smiled. Finally, I was seeing the real Claire. Private? Really? Those letters were in books on a shelf. Anyone could take them out and read them. That shows you didn't think they were private. In fact, it looked like you wanted them to be found. You shouldn't have shared them without asking me first. I shrugged. I was just following your example about our marriage. Besides, I've seen many love letters online. People usually find them warm and loving. You're not ashamed of yours, right? You've kept them for years. So what's the problem? Don't pick on me, Danny. I sound cheap. I shrugged and smiled, raising an eyebrow. What I did might have been wrong, but it wasn't mean. What you did was cruel. Maybe it was wrong, she said, questioning. It wasn't. I couldn't believe it. Asking another guy to be our child's father wasn't mean or cruel. What planet does she live on? But before I could say more, my dad whispered, "Stay calm. Don't let her get a reaction from you." "Whatever you say, Claire." Her lack of emotion seemed to make her even angrier. Her face turned redder than when I opened the door. "I'm going to make you pay for this, Danny. I'll go to a lawyer on Monday and take this house from you. I'll throw you out on the street. I'm done pretending. I'll make you pay for embarrassing me. How about you save some time and move out this weekend? You can take over the mortgage and the workers needed for the renovations. The court will make you pay half, and you might even have to pay me some money." "Not likely, Claire. You watch too much American TV. It doesn't work that way here. You earn a good salary and can take care of yourself. You won't get any support. My parents have said they can help me with my mortgage, but I won't need it if I stay with them or Sean for a little while." "Why should they help you?" Claire asked. "You can work and you make good money." "There's nothing wrong with you," she said. "Oh, but there is," I replied. "The stress from your betrayal has messed up my head. I made a mistake at work today and hurt my back." "That wasn't true. I just had an old sports injury that flared up sometimes. I had to wear a belt to support my back." "That's nonsense," Claire spat. I shrugged and said, "Whatever you say, Claire." I watched her try to think of what to say next. What would she do to get her way? I suddenly got tired of our fight and decided to take a step forward. "Sure, Claire. We could just skip to the end, split everything, and sell the house as is. If we do that, we'll both end up with nothing," she said. I shrugged again. I could see this annoyed her, and I made a note to do that more in the future. "So what?" I said. "It's just money. I've worked too hard to let it go." She hissed at me, and I had to stop myself from laughing. Had she worked harder than me? She had planted a few herbs and rose bushes. What about all those weekends I spent working? "Then just buy me out and you can finish the house yourself," I said. Claire narrowed her eyes at me, as if she thought I might crumble under her stare. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her response. Instead, she turned and walked away, glancing back over her shoulder. "This isn't over, Danny. I'm going to see a lawyer and make you pay." I closed the door and headed to the patio. I knew my dad would be there. "Did you hear any of that?" I asked as I sat down and grabbed a soda he offered. "Yeah, I heard most of it," he replied. I sighed, realizing I hadn't kept my cool. There were moments when I let my anger show. "Nobody's perfect, Danny," he said. "She has her own plans, and she was upset too, so she probably didn't hear most of what you said." "I hope so." "Do you have a lot saved up?" he asked. "About $60,000. Why?" "Remember the loan your mom and I gave you when you were 21 to start your business?" "Yeah," I smiled, knowing where he was going with this. "Well, your mom and I are taking out a loan now. We need some money for our retirement." I grinned wide. "I'll write a bank check for you first thing on Monday." "Thanks a lot, son." The loan was my idea. My parents always claimed it was a gift, wanting to help while they were alive. They did the same for Sean when he became independent. Both Sean and I were proud and stubborn. We decided to fill out the loan papers ourselves, even though we knew Mom and Dad wouldn't accept any money back from us. I had never been more thankful for my stubbornness than at that moment. Paying back the loan would have left me with only $10,000 in my savings. That account was mine. Claire had never put any money in it, so no judge could say I couldn't use it to pay my debt. Dad sipped his soda while thinking about my garden. "I guess we'll take care of Sean's debt too," I said. Dad was a good chess player, and Sean and I rarely won against him. I could see him thinking through his next move. If he made Sean pay back his debt, it wouldn't seem fair to only ask me for mine. "Yeah," Dad replied. "Mom and I are looking at some investments. Now we'll have the money to do that." In the next few weeks, things were up and down, just as I expected. Claire stayed true to her threat and contacted a lawyer. I got a letter stating that I had 7 days to declare what I owned. After talking with my family, I chose not to hire a lawyer yet. I thought that once Claire saw everything we had, she might settle and leave me alone. I set up meetings with 3 different real estate agents to get written estimates on my property. I smiled politely when each one told me that I would need to pay a lot more for my apartment. As I thought, Their estimates were all higher than what I owed on the mortgage. After I sent the information and my bank statements to Claire's lawyer, I made it clear that they had 7 days to show me Claire's assets. That would annoy her. Meanwhile, the love letters I received got a lot of attention. Claire and Razak got their moment in the spotlight. A radio station through Haley gave me a big bag filled with letters from people who reached out to me, along with some real letters. Oscar was right. Many women wanted to help me feel better. Haley thought this was amazing. I didn't like it. I preferred to stay out of the spotlight. Mom and Mel were with Haley for different reasons. I think they were already trying to find someone to take Claire's place. Dad, Sean, and I finally made a plan for revenge. It wasn't what I had hoped for. I would have rather faced Razak directly and challenged him to a duel to see who would win. Sometimes I wished I lived in an older time when I could challenge him that way. It frustrated me that today's laws often seem to favor the guilty instead of the innocent. If I hit that rat, he could call the police and I'd end up in jail for it. That doesn't sound like a good plan. Fighting him without being seen or paying someone else to do it didn't work either. When I told my dad and Sean, they laughed so hard they had to hold their stomachs. I guess it was a start, at least. The worst day was when Aunt Sally came to visit. She begged us not to give up on Zach. She cried and said everyone was turning away from him. She blamed Claire, saying she had put a spell on him. My mom cried too, but she stood her ground. "Sally, I get that you want to help your son, but don't treat me like I'm foolish." Put a spell on him? This wasn't just a few mistakes. It was years of lies and betrayal. Zach deserved to be cut off for how he hurt Danny. Did you read the letters? Did you see how much he liked making Danny feel bad? Did you see what he did? He was having fun on her wedding day with Danny. It's just wrong. How can you ask us to forgive him? Please, Ellie, just for my sake. I can't leave him. He's my son. He feels so sorry. I know he did wrong, but he's still my son. I replied, I understand, Sally, but I can't. We won't. Danny is my son. If you back Zach, I'm afraid you won't be welcome here anymore. It hurt to see Aunt Sally pick up her bag and hug my mom tightly, the bag bumping against them. I wished I could film this moment and send it to Claire and Razak to show them what their selfishness costs us. Maybe then they'd see we are all connected. Our choices affect others like a stone thrown into a pond, the ripples spread out. But maybe they won't learn anything and won't care at all. My mom buried her face in my dad's arms as Mel let go of Aunt Sally. I stood there feeling lost and sad, tears stinging my eyes from seeing my mom in pain. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to say goodbye to my sister for my sake. But before I could say anything, my dad shook his head and motioned for me to be quiet. Seeing my mom hurt made me even more determined. I would never forgive Claire or Razak for what they did to her. Next chapter. Oh my gosh, it's actually working. I whispered so softly that the sound of waves hitting Dad's yacht nearly drowned me out. I wasn't talking to anyone specific, but Dad and Sean could hear me as they leaned closer, listening to the quiet talk over the phone. Did you think it wouldn't work? Sean asked softly. I nodded. Everything feels so messed up and uncertain. What if he hadn't fallen for Crystal? All I can say is I wish she hadn't only gotten him drunk. I would have liked to see her give him a good piece of her mind, my father said quietly. After all the trouble he and Claire caused your mother, I want payback just as much as you do. The woman we hired, or Lady of the Night as my father called her, didn't seem very professional. Crystal looked classy instead. We paid her a lot, but it turned out she was worth it. Zach couldn't take his eyes off her. Claire was nowhere in his plans. My dad, being my dad, was careful. He even made Crystal sign an agreement not to tell anyone about this. I thought it was probably her first time doing that. I wasn't sure if it would even matter in court, or if she'd use her real name. But if it made my dad feel better, I wasn't going to argue. When she found out who I was, she listened to Haley and Oscar. She even had a friend help her with Zach, and it didn't cost us more. Even women in her line of work don't like dishonesty. Sean bought 2 phones with the money I gave him. One was for our night lady, the other was for us. The only number saved in her phone was ours. Following our plan, she called so we could listen in on her time with Razak. This was the 3rd call like this, and I learned a lot. I didn't know my cousin felt this way about me. He called me names like Boy Scout and Boy Wonder and talked openly with Crystal and Amber about what he had done. He showed no shame. He even boasted about being taller than me for a long time. He told his mother he was so sorry. He blamed me for being pushed away by his family and friends. He said I was a spoiled, pretty boy who always got what he wanted. It made me think, I'm a pretty boy? Sean was also annoyed. We never thought his jealousy and anger ran so deep from his childhood. I wish I could help speed things up, Sean complained. That guy drinks way too much. At this rate, it will take Crystal and Amber until midnight to get him drunk. I really wanted to go fishing tonight. I couldn't help but hum. You just want to see him make a fool of himself, Sean replied. Well, yeah, like you wouldn't want to. This was your idea, remember? Patience. Good things come to those who wait. Though I'm looking forward to seeing him embarrassed too, Dad smiled. In the dim light of the boat's room, he looked angry. That was one of my goals. I wanted Razak to end up in real trouble. Another goal was that he should have both arms broken. It would send a strong message to keep his hands off things and people that aren't his, and he wouldn't be able to take care of himself for a while. Breaking his arms and making him suffer was just a bonus to teach him an important lesson. But first, Crystal and her friend needed to convince him to invite them over. The house was a small, old townhouse with steep, narrow stairs that led up to the bedroom. He joked that he was lucky he hadn't hurt himself going down them when he was drunk. But today, he wasn't careful at all. How about you take Amber and me to your house and have some fun there, I said, gently bumping heads with Dad and Sean as we all leaned closer to the phone, hoping Razak would accept our suggestion. Sure, he whispered. Let's go have some fun. We heard a soft noise. I glanced at Dad and Sean and we all shrugged. We listened for a few more moments to make sure they were really leaving before we got up. Let's get this show on the road, Sean called out, grinning widely. It'll be just like old times for you two. My dad teased. I guess the apples don't fall far from the tree, huh? Sean teased back, still smiling. He was right. Dad's jokes often annoyed Mom. I smiled at them both. I couldn't think of two better partners for this plan. One by one, we climbed out of the boat and into Dad's black SUV. We picked this car because of its color for this adventure. The night was clear, with a small moon shining, perfect for what we had planned. Razak lived near the harbor in a part of town that was becoming popular again, with many young couples buying and fixing up houses. His small terrace was at the end of the suburb, with the harbor just beyond it. The street had two entrances, and we knew he usually used the one from the city, so we took the one from the harbor, parking in the shadows of the building away from the streetlights. Even without much light, we gathered together, waiting for a sign from Crystal or Amber to let us know it was our turn to go in. It didn't take long. In about 15 minutes, we put on the masks, gloves, and dark baseball caps we had bought for this. We looked like silly ninjas, huddling against the walls of buildings to hide in the shadows. We made our way toward Razak's house. I felt like a secret agent. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't help but laugh. I imagined what the three girls would look like on camera. I thought it would be more like a funny movie than a serious one. Sean pointed two fingers to his eyes and then to the front door of Razak's house, signaling us to look. He had left his door slightly open. We quietly slipped inside and headed to the kitchen. We could hear music and laughter coming from upstairs, where the master bedroom was. He must have thought he was in for a wild night with two pretty girls. Even though he had drunk a lot, I wondered how he would handle things. I took the baseball bat out from my pant leg and leaned it against the wall. Neither of us looked at it. This step in our plan was the hardest. I said I would go downstairs for more drinks. I couldn't tell if it was Amber or Crystal who spoke, but it was Crystal who came down the stairs. Their careful dad put a finger to his lips, telling her to be quiet. She nodded and went to the fridge to grab 3 slices of something. Great. The taste of the laxative would be hidden by the Swedish candy. It was better than cheap drinks like beer or vodka. The way she opened the candy showed she was not drunk at all. She let the candy wrappers drop on the counter and took 1 piece, eating it quickly. Dad then pulled out a strong laxative he called industrial strength. It worked faster and stronger than anything you could get without a doctor's note. He had gone to the doctor about being constipated and had come back with a prescription. Crystal handed her dad the candy slice and he added some crushed pills. She covered the bottle's opening with her thumb and shook it gently to mix the powder. After wiping her finger on a towel, she gave us a wink and went back upstairs. We could hear glasses clinking and laughter, and soon Crystal returned for more. She and her dad did the same thing again. It took 6 more rounds to use up all the crushed laxative. When Crystal climbed the stairs one last time, Sean covered his mouth to hold back a laugh. "He'll really regret this," he said, letting out a sigh. "That's if his stomach doesn't explode first," my dad whispered, equally amused. "Come on, drink up," we heard Crystal say. 5 long minutes went by, and it felt so slow. Finally, both girls came down the stairs looking fine, not drunk at all. If being drunk was a sport, they would win gold medals. "He's out of it," Amber whispered, but it probably wasn't needed anymore. "Have fun, boys. It was nice working with you," she said as they left. Once they were gone, we quietly walked up the stairs, me leading the way. Razak was lying face down on the bed with his jeans around his ankles. Perfect. That gave us another reason for why he was careless. I slapped his cheek and then his backside. He didn't react at all. He was really out of it. I turned him over so I was sitting on his chest. Sean took hold of his legs. It was awkward and I almost stumbled, but we managed to get him down the stairs without any problems. Razak didn't make a sound. He really wasn't himself. We laid him down at the bottom of the stairs and I took out the bat. This was the hardest part. I took a deep breath and thought about everything he had done. I remembered all the ways he hated me, all the times he betrayed me, and all the moments he looked me in the eye and lied. I could picture my mom crying and saying goodbye to my sister for the last time. It hurt to remember how he let me be part of his lies just for his own fun. I thought about how he spent my wedding day with Claire, how he was happy to get her pregnant, and how I had raised his child without knowing. That's when I lost my temper and swung at him. Dad put his hand on my shoulder and said it was good that I didn't enjoy being harsh, but he didn't want me to regret my choices. He said the punishment was deserved. I got back on my feet and nodded, unable to talk for a moment. We all looked at one another, unsure of what to do next. Should we leave now or wait for the fireworks? I suggested we should go now. So we left quietly without saying anything until we got to the cabin. We all laughed, but it didn't feel real. I just hoped Dad and my brother wouldn't regret helping me find justice. My father took us out into the open sea. Sean and I took off our clothes, gloves, and hats and threw them overboard. The bat stayed on the boat for when a shark was caught, and I put it back in the utility closet afterward. We dropped anchor, cast the fishing line, drank brandy, and talked about everything but what was really on our minds. Next chapter. "Oh my gosh, you won't believe what happened at work today," Mel said as she threw her purse on the kitchen table and joined us outside. The moment Declan and Maddie heard her, they stopped playing with Sean and me and ran to her. "Mom," I said, rolling to my side. "Well, it looks like we know where we stand," Sean said with a laugh. "Be thankful for small things. In an hour, they'll get bored of Mom and want to tickle Daddy and Uncle Danny again. Rest while you can." For a moment, my heart ached. I thought about whether I would ever have my own child to be bored with me. I stood up and held my hand out to Sean. I picked him up, and we shook it off before heading to Mom and Dad. Mom gave us both a beer. Soon after, Mel came over and set the kids in front of the TV with a movie. Finding Nemo should keep them busy for a bit. "So what happened at work?" Mom asked. "You won't believe this. They brought Zach in with broken wrists. He got drunk and fell down the stairs," Mel said, trying not to laugh, but she couldn't help herself. "Oh my God!" She kept laughing. "He crapped his pants," she said, covering her mouth with her hand. "And now he has the worst diaper rash." Mel was crying so much that she was almost laughing. We all joined in the laughter, and I tried not to look at Sean and Daddy, keeping my focus on Mel. I wondered about diaper rash. Mel wiped her tears and nodded. "Yes," she said. "He's been lying in his own mess for so long that he got the worst diaper rash. Now everyone at the hospital is laughing at him. It's like karma. What goes around comes around." My mother said this with a smile, and I couldn't help but grin as well. The universe had thrown me a small win with that diaper rash. "He always drank too much," my father added, laughing a little. Now let's move to the next part. The months that followed were really tough. Claire kept her promise. She was out to make me pay for sharing her love letters. It seemed like she thought it was up to everyone else to forgive, not her. Her anger grew because those letters just wouldn't go away. Every few weeks they popped up on some website or social media. There was even a funny video on YouTube making fun of them. To me, it felt like they had gone viral. Claire was on high alert and she wanted to ruin me. First, she tried to take half of the money I owed my parents, but the court said I had to pay off my debt before she could get her share. Next, she wanted to kick me out of the cottage, but the judge said things should stay the same, especially since I offered to talk things over and save the court some time and money. The talks didn't help Claire. The more I stayed quiet, the angrier she got. More than once, the mediator had to tell her to calm down. She tried to take part in my business, but she didn't succeed because my parents helped me set it up. I'll always be grateful for that advice. After one really harsh text from her late at night, probably because of a new wave of comments online, I went to our next meeting ready to make Claire look bad. I pointed out that she didn't have any savings. Even though we both should have been saving 10% of our income, her bank records showed that she hadn't saved a penny since we moved in together. Meanwhile, I was saving way more than we agreed on, and the female mediator couldn't believe it when I mentioned that Claire had 57 pairs of shoes. I let that sit for a moment. Then I added that she also had 127 designer handbags in her closet when we broke up. I asked Claire if she wanted to let me choose 30 or 40 of them as part of dividing her things. Since that was all she had to show for her supposed savings, the mediator eventually persuaded Claire not to ask for half of my $10,000 in savings. She said that based on my proof of how I had paid for almost everything except groceries during our marriage, she would suggest that the court not punish me for saving money when Claire had not. By the end of the year, I was tired of playing games, so I got Claire to agree to sell the house without any furniture. I didn't need it anymore. I wanted to move on with my life, away from any reminders of the person I saw as a hidden trouble in my life. The mediator agreed with this plan. The condo sold quickly, and I must admit I was pleased to hand Claire a check for just over $1,000 when everything was finished. This was about $100 for each year we were married. I could accept that, and with the money settled, I filed for divorce. I sent Claire off to work. I didn't want to embarrass her. I just didn't know where she had been for the last year. It was my choice. I needed space. The first night, just a few days before I filed, I realized I had gone the whole day without thinking of her. The feeling was amazing. I can't explain the joy I felt. It was like what I imagine a person feels when they hear their illness is gone. I cried. I put my head on the table and sobbed like a child out of gratitude. Tears kept coming, but I didn't try to stop them. Not this time. These weren't tears for Claire. I wasn't crying over the end of my marriage. I had no anger or hurt. These were tears of relief, simply relief. I knew there could be life after Claire, maybe even love. It was a final cleansing of my heart, a release from all the bad emotions. They washed away everything that connected me to her. These tears were good for me. They were healing. They set me free from my past. I let them come. When they finally stopped, I laughed. I was free. Sure, there were still some things to sort out, but emotionally, in every way that mattered, I was free. It felt powerful. It changed my life. That night marked a new start. I could finally sleep through the night. I could truly enjoy my meals and taste the food again. Best of all, I found peace. It was so healing that I wanted to keep that feeling. I didn't want to go back to worrying about Claire and our fake marriage. At some point, I realized I didn't need to say hurtful things about her anymore. I got what I wanted. I felt indifferent, complete and absolute indifference. Throughout everything, my family stood by me. They dealt with my mood swings and listened to my complaints about Claire's latest silly actions. On my bad days, when I feared this nightmare would never end, I didn't know how I would have gotten through without their love, patience, and support. Ratty left town without knowing that I was the one who hurt him. It proved that drinking too much can lead to bad things. I heard he moved to Sydney, which felt strange to me. I felt sorry for him. Our family was big and friendly. We had many birthdays, anniversaries, and weddings, but he was no longer invited to any of those, and he had to carry the guilt that his mother wasn't invited either. I hoped it made him think. One of the good parts of this year was getting to know Haley. We became friends. One night she asked me why I didn't want to talk to Claire about what she had done. As I shared my feelings, I realized it wouldn't change anything. Claire wouldn't listen to me. At best, she was unable to understand. At worst, it would just turn into an argument that would help her feel better about herself, even though she couldn't hurt me anymore. I didn't want to help her feel guilty at my cost. One evening with Haley, I had a big realization. I married for love, while Claire was more like an actress who married her leading man to show off her beauty. My time with Haley was just friendship. I really liked her, and her gentle touches and warm looks showed she liked me too. But I didn't want to start something that could hurt either of us. When I decided to make a move, I wanted to do it because I wanted to, not because I felt I needed to. I wanted my choice to come from good reasons. I was honest with her because she deserved that. I told her I was in a dark place and didn't want to move our friendship forward until I was out of it. I will never forget her smile when she asked, "Are you saying I am your light at the end of the tunnel?" In the next part of my story, I stood by the mailbox of my new home holding a formal envelope. I knew what it was before I opened it. It was my final divorce paper. Without looking back, I walked to my truck and got in. At every stoplight, I glanced at the envelope sitting on the seat next to me. It was over. Finally over. I stopped worrying about that and focused on the road ahead, the road to my future. Who knows how things will turn out with Haley, not me, not her. But I felt good about it. I felt good about her, and I was ready to take that chance. I had a feeling I wanted to understand. I moved faster, feeling restless. I wanted to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I was determined to reach it. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.